My stepdaughter looked me up and down in the middle of a five-star restaurant and told me I looked like her chauffeur. When I tried to correct her disrespect, my wife, the woman I saved from bankruptcy, slammed her hand on the table and told me to know my place. She said I was nothing more than a wallet with a pulse. I did not yell. I did not make a scene. I simply picked up my fork, finished my steak, and sent a two-word text message to my lawyer under the table. By the time the check came, their world was already burning. They just didn't smell the smoke yet. Before I tell you how I destroyed their egos, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Let me know in the comments where you are watching from. My name is Cyrus Blackwood. I am 70 years old. I am a black man who grew up in a time and place where you had to fight for every inch of ground you stood on. I built Blackwood Logistics from the mud up, starting with one delivery van and ending with a fleet that covers the entire eastern seaboard. I learned early that the loudest man in the room is usually the weakest. Real power is quiet. Real power is patient. 3 years ago, I married Vanessa. I was lonely, I admit it. My first wife, God rest her soul, had been gone for 5 years. Vanessa was younger, 50, vibrant, and seemed to need someone to lean on. I thought I was being a protector. I did not realize I was simply a host for a parasite. She brought along her baggage a 26-year-old daughter named Jasmine who believes the world owes her a living because she is pretty, and a son-in-law named Tyler, a boy who confuses arrogance with intelligence. Tonight was supposed to be a celebration. It was our 3rd anniversary. I had reserved the best table at La Gabrielle, the kind of French restaurant where they whisper the prices and the water costs more than gasoline. I arrived at 7 o'clock sharp. Punctuality is not just a habit, it is a sign of respect. I sat there sipping sparkling water, watching the door. 7:15 passed, then 7:30. At 7:45, the maitre d', a man named Henri who has known me for 20 years, walked over. He didn't say anything, he just refilled my glass with a look of profound apology in his eyes. He knew. Everyone in the room knew. The old man was being stood up by his trophy family. They finally breezed in at 8:15, no rush in their steps, no panic. Jasmine led the way, wearing a dress that was barely there, flashing a diamond bracelet I had paid for. Tyler was behind her, eyes glued to his phone, thumbs typing away, probably posting about the oppressive atmosphere of high-end dining while preparing to eat a $300 meal. Vanessa came last. She looked stunning in emerald green, chin held high, scanning the room not for her husband, but for anyone important who might see her. They sat down in a flurry of noise, dragging chairs, dropping designer bags on the pristine tablecloth. Traffic was a nightmare, Vanessa said, not looking at me, but at her reflection in the silverware. And Tyler couldn't find his other shoe. "Hey, don't put that on me," Tyler muttered, still not looking up from his screen. Jasmine took forever with her hair. "Because I have standards," Jasmine snapped. She finally looked across the table at me. Her eyes narrowed. She scanned my suit, a charcoal wool blend I've had for a decade. "It's comfortable. It fits. It's clean." She let out a loud theatrical sigh. "Seriously, Cyrus. This is La Gabrielle. Could you not have put on something less ancient? You look like you're waiting to drive us home. It's embarrassing." The couple at the next table turned to look. I felt the heat rise in my chest, but I kept my hands folded on the table. "This suit is fine, Jasmine," I said, my voice low. "It is the man inside the suit that matters. And considering you are 45 minutes late to a dinner I am paying for, I suggest you focus on your menu, not my wardrobe." I saw Tyler smirk. He nudged Jasmine under the table. "Told you, he thinks he's the godfather." "I don't care what he thinks," Jasmine said, picking up the menu and inspecting it with disdain. "I just don't want my friends to see me sitting with someone who looks like the help." That was the word, the help. I looked at Vanessa. Surely this was the line. Surely the woman who slept in my bed, the woman whose debts I cleared, whose mother I housed, would correct this disrespect. "Vanessa," I said calmly, "your daughter is out of line." Vanessa stopped checking her makeup. She turned those cold eyes on me. Her lips thinned. "Don't start, Cyrus," she hissed. "Start," I asked. "She just called me the help." "Well, look at you," Vanessa said, waving a hand at me dismissively. "She isn't wrong. You refuse to upgrade your style. You refuse to buy the clothes I pick out. You insist on looking like a relic. It reflects poorly on us, on me." She leaned forward, her voice dropping to a venomous whisper. "And let's be clear about something. Do not correct her. She is not your daughter. You didn't raise her. You don't have the right to discipline her. You have one role here, Cyrus. You provide. You sign the checks. You make sure we live the life we deserve. That is it. So stop trying to be the patriarch and just be the wallet. It's the only thing you're good for at this age. The silence that followed was heavy. It was absolute. The air conditioning hummed. A waiter dropped a fork somewhere in the distance. I looked at Tyler. He was grinning openly now, enjoying the show. I looked at Jasmine. She looked triumphant, smug, untouchable, and I looked at Vanessa. I saw it then. The truth I had been ignoring for 3 years. There was no partnership, there was no affection, there was only transaction. To them, I was an ATM machine that had developed an annoying habit of speaking. I felt a strange sensation in my chest. It wasn't pain. It was the clicking of a lock, the final tumbler falling into place. The door to my heart, which had been standing ajar, hoping for a breeze of kindness, slammed shut and bolted. "I see," I said. My voice was steady, almost gentle. "I understand my position now." "Good," Vanessa said, leaning back and opening her menu. "Now let's order. I'm starving. And I'm ordering the Wagyu. You can afford it." "Order whatever you like," I said. I picked up my knife and fork. I cut a piece of the bread Henri had placed on the table. I ate it slowly. While they debated the wine list, arguing over whether a $200 bottle of Cabernet was impressive enough for Tyler's Instagram story, I slipped my left hand into my pocket. I unlocked my phone by feel. I opened the encrypted chat with O'Malley. O'Malley isn't just a lawyer. He's a pit bull in a 3-piece suit. He's been waiting for this text for 6 months. I typed 2 words, execute 0. I hit send. I brought my hand back up to the table and took a sip of water. The dinner proceeded. It was a masterclass in gluttony. They ordered the seafood tower. They ordered the foie gras. They ordered the Wagyu beef rare. They ordered 2 bottles of the most expensive red wine on the list. They ate like starving wolves, but they talked like royalty. "We need to book the Amalfi Coast for July," Jasmine said, chewing with her mouth open. "I saw this villa on TikTok. It's only $15,000 a week. Cyrus can write it off as a business expense, right, Mom?" "We'll see," Vanessa said, swirling her wine. "I was thinking of a cruise, but a private charter. I'm tired of sharing space with tourists." "I need a new laptop for my consulting business," Tyler added, using air quotes that everyone ignored. "The new MacBook Pro maxed out. It's like $4,000, small change." "Just put it on the company card," Vanessa said lazily. "He never checks the statements." She gestured at me with her fork, not even looking at my face. I sat there. I ate my simple filet-o-fish. I listened. I let them stack the evidence of their own greed higher and higher. Every bite they took was a nail in their coffin. Every arrogant demand was a shovel of dirt on their grave. "Cyrus, you're being very quiet," Vanessa mocked halfway through the meal. "Sulking because I put you in your place." "I am just enjoying the food, Vanessa," I said. "It is a very expensive meal. One should savor it." "Whatever," she muttered. "Just make sure you leave a big tip. I don't want the staff thinking we're cheap just because you look like it." When the dessert plates were finally cleared, half-eaten chocolate soufflés that cost more than my first week's wages back in the day, the waiter arrived with the leather folder. He placed it in the center of the table right between the candle and the centerpiece. Usually this is the moment I reach for it. It is the ritual. The wallet performs his function. But tonight I kept my hands folded in my lap. I looked at the folder. Then I looked out the window at the city lights. The silence stretched. 5 seconds, 10 seconds, 30 seconds. Vanessa stopped applying her lipstick. She looked at the bill, then at me. "Well," she said, her tone sharp. "Are you going to get that?" I turned my head slowly to look at her. "Get what?" "The bill, Cyrus. Stop being childish. Pick it up." I smiled. It was a small, cold smile. "But Vanessa," I said softly, "you said I look like the driver. Drivers do not pay for $1,000 dinners. Drivers wait in the car." Jasmine let out a loud groan. "Oh my God, he is literally having a midlife crisis right now. Mom, just pay it. We can yell at him at home." "Fine," Vanessa snapped. She glared at me with pure venom. "You are pathetic, Cyrus. Truly pathetic." She reached into her Gucci bag, another gift, and pulled out the platinum card. It was an authorized user card linked to my primary business account. It had a limit that could buy a small house. She threw it onto the bill tray with a flick of her wrist like she was tossing a bone to a dog. She signaled the waiter. "Take it, and add 25%. I want to make up for his attitude." The waiter bowed and took the folder. He walked to the terminal station near the entrance. I watched him. I saw him swipe the card. I saw the machine pause. I saw the red light flash. I saw him frown. He wiped the chip on his apron and inserted it. Red light. He picked up the restaurant phone. He spoke for a moment, nodding, his face growing pale. He hung up and walked back to the table. He didn't come to me. He went to Vanessa. He leaned down, keeping his voice discreet, but in the silence of our table it sounded like a scream. "I am terribly sorry, madame. The card has been declined." Vanessa laughed. A short, incredulous bark. "Don't be ridiculous. That card has no limit. Run it again." "I did, madame. The bank says the account has been closed, reported lost or stolen." "Stolen?" Vanessa screeched. She turned to me. "Cyrus, what did you do? Did you forget to pay the bill?" I took a sip of my coffee. "I pay my bills, Vanessa, always." "Then fix this," she demanded. "Give him another card." "I don't think I will," I said. "Fine," she yelled. "Jasmine, give him yours. It's linked to the same account." "If Mom's is down, mine is down," Jasmine said, panic starting to creep into her voice. Tyler shrank in his seat. I don't have my wallet. I left it in the Tesla." The waiter coughed. "The bill is $1,240, madam." Vanessa looked around. Heads were turning. The elite of the city were watching the loud, rude family crumble. "Cyrus," she hissed, her voice trembling with rage. "Pay the man now." "I am just the help, Vanessa," I said, my voice hard as iron. "And the help doesn't carry that kind of cash." She had to call 3 different friends. She had to beg. She had to explain loudly that it was a banking error. It took 30 minutes. 30 minutes of her sweating in her emerald dress while I sat there calm, collected, and completely detached. When she finally transferred the funds from a friend to pay the bill, she stood up shaking. "I am going home," she spat at me. "And when you get there, you and I are going to have a very different conversation. You will regret this night for the rest of your short life." They stormed out. I watched them go. I finished my coffee. Then I reached into my pocket and pulled out a stack of cash. I left $200 on the table for the waiter. "Sorry for the trouble, Henri," I said as I stood up. I walked out into the cool night air. My phone buzzed. "O'Malley. Phase 1 complete. Tow trucks are en route for 0600. Eviction notice drafted." I smiled. The dinner was over. But the real show was just beginning. At 5:55 in the morning, the house was silent. It was a fragile silence, the kind that exists right before a storm breaks. I stood at the bay window of my second-floor study holding a mug of black coffee. The steam rose in thin swirls against the cold glass. Outside, the sky was bleeding from purple to a bruised orange. I took a sip. The coffee was bitter, just the way I like it. It tasted like preparation. Down the hallway, I could hear the faint, rhythmic breathing of a house asleep. Jasmine was in the East Wing, probably dreaming of the Italian vacation she thought I was paying for. Tyler was in the guest suite, likely sleeping off the exhaustion of doing absolutely nothing all day. And Vanessa was in the master bedroom alone. I had slept in the study. I had not slept much. I did not need sleep. I needed results. At exactly 6 o'clock, the silence shattered. It started with a low rumble in the distance, a vibration that you felt in your teeth before you heard it with your ears. Then came the heavy mechanical whine of diesel engines shifting gears. I looked down the long paved driveway that led to my estate. 2 sets of yellow hazard lights cut through the morning mist. They were bright, aggressive flashes that signaled the end of an era. 2 flatbed tow trucks turned into the property. They were massive machines built for heavy-duty repossession, not polite suburban pickups. They moved with a predatory grace, their tires crunching loudly on the decorative gravel I had paid $10,000 to install last year. I watched them maneuver. The lead truck, a black monster with a steel winch, backed up toward the 3-car garage. Its target was parked right in front. The Range Rover Autobiography. Jasmine's pride and joy. A $90,000 SUV that she washed more often than she called her own grandmother. The second truck positioned itself behind the white Tesla Model S Tyler's car. The car he claimed saved the planet while I paid the lease. The air brakes of the first truck hissed loudly. It was a sharp, violent sound that echoed off the brick facade of the house. A moment later, I heard it. The scream. It came from the East Wing. It was a high-pitched shriek of pure confusion and terror. Then came the sound of feet pounding on hardwood floors. The front door flew open. Jasmine burst out onto the driveway. She was wearing pink silk pajamas and an eye mask was pushed up on her forehead. She was barefoot. She ran across the cold gravel, her arms waving frantically. "Stop. Hey, stop, what are you doing? Get away from my car." She threw herself between the tow truck and the Range Rover, shielding the grille with her body as if she could stop a 10-ton truck with her outrage alone. The driver of the tow truck did not even blink. He was a large man with a beard thick enough to hide a wrench in. He wore a neon yellow vest over a flannel shirt. He opened his door and stepped down, his steel-toed boots hitting the ground with a heavy thud. He held a clipboard in one hand. Jasmine was hysterical. She was slapping the hood of her car. "You are stealing my car. I am calling the police." "Do you know who I am? Get back in your truck and leave." The driver walked up to her. He did not look intimidated. He looked bored. He looked like a man who had heard every excuse and every threat in the book. "Ma'am, please step away from the vehicle," he said. His voice was gravel and smoke. "No," Jasmine screamed. "This is my car. My stepfather bought this for me. You are making a mistake. A huge mistake." The driver looked down at his clipboard. He ran a thick finger down a list. "I have a repossession order here for a 2021 Range Rover VIN ending in 459. Registered owner is Blackwood Logistics Incorporated. The order is signed by the CEO, Cyrus Blackwood. Authorization code 0 Alpha 1. Immediate seizure of company assets." Jasmine froze. Her mouth hung open. She blinked. "Blackwood Logistics. No, that is wrong. Cyrus gave it to me. It is a gift. It is mine." The driver shook his head. "Paperwork says company fleet vehicle, ma'am. Driver is unauthorized. Insurance has been canceled as of midnight. I have to take it." He signaled to his partner in the cab. The truck began to back up again, the reverse beeper cutting through Jasmine's protests like a knife. I stood in the window and watched. I took another sip of coffee. I remembered the day we bought that car 3 years ago. It was her graduation gift. She had demanded white leather interiors and the upgraded sound system. I had pulled out my checkbook ready to write a personal check for the full amount. But O'Malley, my lawyer, had stopped me. He had called me from his office while I was standing in the dealership. Cyrus put it in the company name he had advised. Why, I had asked. "It is a gift." "Because you never know," O'Malley had said. "Tax write-offs are good, Cyrus, but leverage is better. If it is in your name, it is a gift. If it is in the company name, it is a perk. Perks can be revoked. Gifts cannot." I had listened to him. I had told Jasmine it was for tax purposes. She did not care as long as she got the keys. She signed the papers without reading them. She signed a company use agreement thinking it was a formality. She signed her own eviction from the driver's seat and she did not even know it. Now 3 years later, that signature was the only thing that mattered. Jasmine looked up at the house. Her eyes scanned the windows. She saw me. I did not hide. I stood there framed by the mahogany wood of my study window. I was wearing my robe, the silk cool against my skin. I looked her right in the eye. She screamed my name. "Cyrus." It was a sound of impotent rage, a sound of a spoiled child realizing the candy store was burning down. She ran toward the house, leaving the Range Rover unguarded. The tow truck driver wasted no time. He hooked the chains to the axle in seconds. The winch whined, and the front of the luxury SUV lifted into the air. Jasmine burst into the house. I heard her running up the stairs. But I turned my attention to the second conflict unfolding in the driveway. Tyler had come out. He was shirtless, wearing only boxer briefs. He looked sleepy and confused, blinking in the morning light. He saw the tow trucks. He saw the Range Rover rising into the air. Panic washed over his face. He did not run to help Jasmine. He ran to the Tesla. Self-preservation is the first instinct of a coward. He reached the white car. He grabbed the door handle. Usually the handle presents itself automatically. It slides out to greet the driver. Today the handle stayed flush with the body of the car. It was a smooth, white surface, impenetrable. Tyler pulled at it. His fingers slipped. He tapped his pockets, realizing he did not have his phone key. He ran back to the front door, grabbed his phone from the entry table, and ran back to the car. He held the phone up to the pillar. Nothing happened. He tapped the screen frantically. I could see him swiping and tapping, his face growing redder by the second. I knew what he was seeing on his screen. I had authorized the command myself 10 minutes ago through the Central Fleet Management app on my secure tablet. Access denied. User unauthorized. Contract terminated. The Tesla was a smart car, and right now it was smart enough to know that Tyler was no longer welcome inside. The second tow truck driver, a younger man with tattoos on his neck, walked up to Tyler. "Keys," he said, holding out his hand. Tyler looked at him wild-eyed. "I cannot get in. The app is not working. It is glitching." It is not a glitch, buddy, the driver said. Remote lockout. Corporate shut it down. They do that when you do not pay the bill or when you get fired. Which one is it? Tyler looked at the house. He looked at the window where I stood. I am not fired, he shouted at the window. I am family. You cannot do this, Cyrus. I have a yoga retreat at 10. I took a slow, deliberate sip of coffee. I watched as the driver hooked the Tesla up. The car was bricked. A $90,000 paperweight until I decided otherwise. Tyler kicked the tire of the car. He hurt his foot. He hopped around on one leg, cursing. It was pathetic. It was glorious. I turned away from the window. The show outside was over. The real battle was about to begin inside. I walked to my desk and sat down. I opened my laptop. I had a clear view of the door. 3 minutes later, the door to my study flew open. It hit the wall with a crack. Vanessa stood there. She was wearing a silk robe that I had bought her in Paris. Her face was covered in a green night cream that made her look like a swamp creature. Her hair was in curlers. Her eyes were wide with a mixture of shock and fury. Jasmine was behind her sobbing. Tyler was lurking in the hallway looking like a kicked puppy. You have lost your mind, Vanessa screamed. She marched into the room, her finger pointed at my chest like a weapon. Call them off, Cyrus. Call them off right now. You are humiliating us. The neighbors are watching. I leaned back in my leather chair. I interlaced my fingers over my stomach. Good morning, Vanessa, I said calmly. I trust you slept well. Do not play games with me, she hissed, slamming her hands onto my desk. Why are there tow trucks in my driveway? Why is my daughter crying? Why is Tyler's car locked? I looked at the papers on my desk. Technically, Vanessa, it is my driveway. And those are my cars. Or rather, my company's cars. And since none of you are employees of Blackwood Logistics, and since our familial relationship has suffered an irreconcilable breakdown as of dinner last night, I have decided to reallocate company resources to more productive areas. She stared at me. Her chest heaved. You are doing this because of dinner, because Jasmine made a joke, because I didn't pay the bill fast enough. You are being petty, Cyrus. You are a petty, bitter old man. I stood up. I moved slowly, unfolding my frame until I was standing at my full height. I am 6'2". Vanessa is 5'5". I cast a shadow over her. It was not a joke, Vanessa. It was a revelation. You showed me who you are. You showed me that you see me as a servant, a driver, a wallet. I walked around the desk. She took a step back, her bravery faltering for a second. I am not petty, I said, my voice hard. I am efficient. In business, when an asset becomes a liability, you liquidate it, you cut the loss, you do not keep pouring money into a hole. You pushed me too far, you insulted me in public, you let your daughter treat me like garbage, and you applauded her. Vanessa crossed her arms. She tried to regain her composure. She tried to summon the arrogance that had served her so well for 3 years. You cannot do this, she said, her voice icy. I am your wife. We have laws in this state, marital property laws. You cannot just take things away. I will sue you, Cyrus. I will call the best divorce lawyer in the city, and I will take you for everything you have. I will take the house. I will take the business. I will take the shirt off your back. I smiled. It was a cold, terrifying smile. I was hoping you would say that. I reached into my desk drawer. I pulled out a single sheet of paper. It was a copy. The original was in a safe deposit box that only O'Malley could access. Do you remember this, Vanessa? She looked at the paper. She squinted. It was the prenuptial agreement we had signed 3 years ago. You told me that was just a formality, she whispered. You said you didn't care about paper. I lied, I said. Just like you lied when you said you loved me. I tossed the paper on the desk. Read paragraph 4, section B, the infidelity clause. She laughed, a nervous, high-pitched sound. I never cheated on you, Cyrus. You know that. I have been faithful. Infidelity is not just physical, Vanessa, I said. Financial infidelity is also a breach of contract. Unauthorized transfer of marital assets to a third party. Her face went white. You thought I didn't know I asked. You thought I didn't see the transfers. $200,000 over 3 years, sent to an account in your mother's name. She stayed silent. Tyler put it on Instagram, I said. He posted a picture of your mother's new kitchen. He tagged it. Thanks to Grandma's secret stash. He is not very bright, your son-in-law. Vanessa turned to look at Tyler in the hallway. If looks could kill, he would have dropped dead right there. That money was for family emergencies, she stammered. It was theft, I corrected. And according to this contract which you signed with a lawyer, present theft voids your claim to alimony. It voids your claim to marital assets. It voids everything. I pointed to the door. So, go ahead, Vanessa. Sue me, call your lawyer, but make sure you have the retainer fee in cash. Because as of 6 a.m. this morning your joint accounts are empty, your credit cards are canceled, and you do not have a car to drive to court. She stared at me. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. The reality of her situation was crashing down on her. No money, no car, no leverage. Now get out of my office, I said, my voice dropping to a growl. I have work to do, and you have packing to do. Packing, she whispered. Yes, I said, sitting back down. I suggest you start with the clothes. You have a lot of them, and you are going to have to carry them. She stood there for a moment, trembling with rage and fear. Then she turned and ran out of the room, pushing past Tyler. Jasmine followed, wailing. I listened to them running up the stairs. I listened to the panic setting in. I looked out the window one last time. The tow trucks were gone. The driveway was empty. The sun was fully up now, bathing the world in a harsh, revealing light. I picked up my coffee. It was cold. I drank it anyway. Phase 2 was about to begin, and if they thought the cars were a problem, they had no idea what was coming next. The tuition bill for Jasmine's master's degree was sitting on my desk. Due today. I reached for the phone. It was time to make a call to the dean. The dust from the tow trucks had barely settled when the next blow landed. It arrived with a cheerful little chime from a smartphone. I was sitting in my study with the door open, listening to the sounds of a house in panic. I heard Jasmine's phone ping. It was the specific notification sound for her university email priority inbox. I checked my watch. It was 9 in the morning. The bursar's office at Columbia University opens at exactly 9. I knew this because I had set the automatic payments to trigger at 9:05 for the last 2 years. But today I had canceled the authorization at 8:59. I heard a gasp from the hallway. It was a sound of pure oxygen-depriving shock. Then came the sound of frantic tapping on a glass screen. Jasmine was trying to refresh the page, hoping it was a mistake. She burst into my office a moment later. Her face was pale. She held her phone out like it was a live grenade. "What did you do?" she screamed. "What did you do to my tuition?" I did not look up from my paperwork. I turned a page of the ledger I was reviewing. "I imagine the email explains it quite clearly, Jasmine," I said. She read from the screen, her voice shaking. "Dear Ms. Vance, we regret to inform you that the sponsorship check for your final semester has been voided by the issuer. The outstanding balance is $45,000. Payment is due within 24 hours, or administrative withdrawal proceedings will begin immediately." She lowered the phone. She looked at me with wide, terrified eyes. "They are going to kick me out, Cyrus. I am 1 semester away from my master's in art history. If I don't pay by tomorrow noon, they wipe my credits. They delete everything." I finally looked up. "Then I suggest you pay them." "Pay them?" she shrieked. "With what? You took my car. You cut my allowance." She began tapping furiously on her phone again. I knew what she was doing. She was trying to use the emergency credit card I had given her for travel, the black card supplement. I watched her face fall. I watched the hope drain out of her eyes, leaving only a hollow panic. "Declined," she whispered. "It says card inactive." I leaned back in my chair. "Did you think I would repo the car but leave the credit line open, Jasmine? I am thorough. That is how I built this house." She stood there trembling. The reality was setting in. She was not just broke. She was destitute. She had no car, no cash, no credit, and in 24 hours she would have no degree. Tyler appeared in the doorway. He had put a shirt on finally, but he still looked disheveled. He saw Jasmine crying. He saw me sitting calmly behind my desk. He decided this was his moment to be a hero. He decided to play the only card he had left in his intellectual deck, the moral outrage card. He walked into the room and put his arm around Jasmine. He glared at me with the righteous indignation of a man who has never worked a hard day in his life. "You are unbelievable, Cyrus," he spat. "Look at her. She is a young black woman trying to better herself. She is trying to get an education, and you are sabotaging her." He took a step closer, his voice rising in theatrical anger. "You are a successful black man. You are supposed to uplift the community. You are supposed to support the next generation. Instead, you are tearing her down because your ego got bruised at a dinner party. You are a disgrace to your people, Cyrus. You are a traitor to your own success." I stared at him. The silence in the room grew heavy. It grew cold. For 70 years I have fought. I fought Jim Crow in the South. I fought banks that would not give me loans because of my zip code. I fought competitors who tried to burn my trucks. I built a dynasty out of sweat and diesel. And here was this boy, this child who lived in my house and ate my food, lecturing me about my obligation to my race. I stood up. I did not rush. I rose like a tide. Tyler took a step back, his bravery faltering. I walked around the desk. I stopped 2 feet from him. "Do not speak to me about obligations, son," I said, my voice a low rumble. "I have put 20 kids through college. Kids who grew up in neighborhoods you are too scared to drive through. Kids who work 2 jobs and study at night. I support them because they respect the opportunity." I pointed at Jasmine. "She does not respect the opportunity. She respects the lifestyle. She is not getting an education to better the community. She is getting a degree so she can sound smart at cocktail parties while I pay the bill." Jasmine sobbed loudly, burying her face in Tyler's shoulder. "You are destroying my future," she wailed. "You are ruining everything." I laughed. It was a harsh sound. "I am not destroying your future, Jasmine. I am giving it back to you. For 3 years your future has been in my wallet. Now it is in your hands." I looked at Tyler. "And you. Do not preach to me about triaging the future. You lease a car that costs more than my first house. You live rent-free. You contribute nothing. You are the weight that sinks the ship." Tyler's face flushed red. "We have rights," he stammered. "We are family. You have a moral duty. My moral duty is to myself." I cut him off, "and my money remains in my hands. If you want to pay her tuition, Tyler, go ahead. Sell your watch. Sell your designer shoes. Be the man you pretend to be." He looked down. He would not sell a thing. We all knew it. Jasmine looked at me desperate now. "Please, Cyrus, just this semester, I will pay you back. I swear." "You will not pay me back," I said, "because you do not know how to earn money. You only know how to spend it." I walked back to my desk. I sat down. I pulled the phone toward me. There was one loose end left to tie up. One final nail in this coffin of their entitlement. "Who are you calling?" Jasmine asked, her voice filled with dread. "I am calling Dean Harrison," I said. "We went to Howard together 40 years ago. He is the head of your department." "No," Jasmine screamed. "No, do not call him." I pressed the speakerphone button. The line rang once, twice. Cyrus, the deep voice of Dean Harrison, filled the room. "To what do I owe the pleasure, my friend?" "Good morning, Marcus," I said, keeping my eyes on Jasmine. "I am calling regarding the financial sponsorship for Jasmine Vance, student ID number 4099. "Yes, I saw the flag on the account," Marcus said. "Is there an issue with the bank transfer?" "No issue, Marcus. I am formally revoking the sponsorship. There will be no further payments from the Blackwood Trust. Not for this semester. Not for any semester." There was a pause on the line. Jasmine was shaking her head, mouthing the word, "please," over and over. "I understand," Marcus said, his tone professional. "And the current balance. It is the student's responsibility," I said. "If it is not paid within the grace period, proceed with expulsion protocols. Do not give her special treatment on my account. Treat her like anyone else." "Understood, Cyrus. I will update the file. Give my best to the wife." The line went dead. The silence that followed was absolute. It was the silence of a life being dismantled in real time. Jasmine looked at me with a hatred so pure it was almost impressive. "I hate you," she whispered. "I hope you die alone." And then the door opened again. Vanessa walked in. She was dressed, but her clothes were wrinkled. She looked like she had aged 10 years since dinner. She had heard the call. She had heard everything. She walked past Jasmine. She walked past Tyler. She came right up to the desk. She reached into her pocket and pulled out her wedding ring. It was a 4-carat diamond. Flawless. I had picked it out myself. She looked at it for a moment. Then she threw it. It hit my chest with a hard thump and bounced onto the floor, rolling under the desk. "You want a war? Cyrus," she said, her voice shaking with rage. "You have one." She slammed her hands on the desk, leaning in until I could smell the stale wine on her breath. "I am divorcing you. And I am not leaving with nothing. I am going to hire the nastiest lawyer in this city. I am going to sue you for emotional distress. I am going to sue you for financial abuse. I am going to take half of this house, half of your business, and half of every dollar you have hidden away." She straightened up, adjusting her jacket. "You think you are teaching us a lesson? You just signed your own death warrant, old man. By the time I am done with you, you will wish you had just paid the damn bill at dinner." I looked at her. I looked at the woman I had tried to save. I did not feel fear. I did not feel regret. I felt relief. I leaned forward. "I accept your terms, Vanessa." I picked up my pen and went back to my ledger. "Now get out of my house. I have a meeting with my lawyer in an hour. And unlike yours, mine is already paid for." Vanessa turned on her heel. "Come on," she barked at Jasmine and Tyler. "We are leaving." "Where are we going?" Jasmine sobbed. "To your grandmother's house," Vanessa said. "We will fight him from there." They marched out of the room. I heard the front door slam. I waited a moment. Then I bent down and picked up the diamond ring from under the desk. I held it up to the light. It was cold and hard and beautiful. I dropped it into the wastebasket. Phase 3 was coming, and Vanessa had just made a fatal mistake. She thought the prenuptial agreement was just a piece of paper. She had forgotten that paper cuts deep, and I had the sharpest paper in town. Vanessa found her champion on a billboard next to Interstate 95. His name was Lionel Blanton, and his slogan was, "We fight for you when no one else will." I know this because the private investigator I hired 2 hours after she left my house sent me a photo of her walking into his strip mall office. Blanton was the kind of lawyer who wore suits that were too shiny and cologne that arrived 5 minutes before he did. He was perfect for Vanessa. He was loud, he was aggressive, and he was cheap. She sat in his office surrounded by fake mahogany furniture and told him a story of a poor, helpless woman married to a tyrannical trucking magnate. She showed him the copy of the prenuptial agreement I had given her. It was a document we had signed 3 years ago, handwritten on yellow legal pad paper. I had insisted on writing it myself. At the time, Vanessa had laughed. She called it cute. She called it a sentimental gesture from an old-fashioned man. She signed it without reading the fine print because she was too busy imagining how she would spend my money. Blanton took one look at the yellow paper and laughed. He told her it was garbage. He told her it would not hold up in any court in America. He told her that handwritten contracts were for selling used lawnmowers, not for protecting multi-million-dollar estates. He told her she had already won. Vanessa believed him. She drank his confidence like it was expensive champagne. She called me that afternoon. Her voice was dripping with a toxic mixture of pity and triumph. "Cyrus," she said, "my lawyer says you are in trouble. He says that silly little paper you made me sign is worthless. We are going to court Cyrus, and I am going to take half. No, actually, I am going to take 60% for emotional distress. You should have just let Jasmine keep the car." I listened to her gloat. I let her finish. Then I said simply, "I will see you at the mediation table, Vanessa. Bring your checkbook." The mediation took place 2 days later in a neutral conference room downtown. The room smelled of lemon polish and impending doom. I arrived 10 minutes early. I sat at the head of the long oak table. To my right sat O'Malley. O'Malley does not advertise on billboards. O'Malley does not have a slogan. O'Malley charges $800 an hour and he is worth every cent. He sat there in a bespoke gray suit, his hands folded on a thick black file folder. He looked like a shark waiting for a seal to fall into the water. Vanessa and Blanton arrived 5 minutes late. It was a power move. A cheap one. Blanton walked in first, extending a hand that I did not shake. Vanessa followed wearing a black dress that looked like funeral attire. She was mourning her marriage but celebrating her payday. Jasmine and Tyler were waiting in the lobby, probably planning which luxury cars they would buy with the settlement money. Blanton threw his briefcase on the table. It made a hollow thud. "Let us make this quick, gentlemen," Blanton said, leaning back in his chair. "My client wants the house, the beach property, and a lump sum payment of $5 million. In exchange, she will not drag Mr. Blackwood's reputation through the mud. We know the prenup is a joke. So let us not waste time pretending it is valid." Vanessa smirked at me. She looked at O'Malley, then back at me. She thought she had the upper hand. She thought the handwritten yellow paper was my only shield. I looked at O'Malley. He did not blink. He did not smile. He simply opened the black folder. "Mr. Blanton," O'Malley said, his voice soft and terrifyingly calm, "you are operating under a misconception. We are not here to debate the validity of the document based on its stationery. We are here to discuss a breach of contract. Blanton laughed. Breach of contract. Please. The only breach here is your client locking my client out of her own home. O'Malley slid a single piece of paper across the table. It was a photocopy of the handwritten prenup. Please direct your attention to paragraph 4, section C, O'Malley said. The financial fidelity clause. Vanessa rolled her eyes. Fidelity. I never cheated on him. I was a faithful wife. Ask anyone. I spoke then. My voice was low. Fidelity is not just about who you sleep with, Vanessa. It is about trust. It is about honesty. And you were sleeping with my money behind my back. Blanton picked up the paper. He squinted at it. This says that any unauthorized transfer of assets exceeding $5,000 to a third party without spousal consent constitutes a material breach of the marriage contract, rendering all spousal support null and void. Blanton looked up. So what? She bought some clothes. She went on a trip. That is not a breach. That is being a wife. O'Malley slid a second document across the table. It was a bank statement. Then another, and another. He fanned them out like a winning poker hand. These are records from Mrs. Blackwood's joint account, O'Malley explained. Over the last 36 months, there have been 42 separate transfers. They range from $3,000 to $8,000 each. They were all sent to an account at a small credit union in Georgia. The account holder is a Ms. Beatrice Davis. Vanessa went pale. Her arrogance evaporated, leaving only a cold, hard fear. Beatrice Davis is her mother. That is my mother, Vanessa stammered. I was helping her. She is sick. She needed medicine. $212,000 in medicine, O'Malley asked, raising an eyebrow. That is a lot of aspirin, Mrs. Blackwood. It was for emergencies, she lied, her voice rising in pitch. Family emergencies. Cyrus knows I helped my mother. I leaned forward. I knew you sent her birthday gifts, Vanessa. I did not know you were building her a new house. Blanton tried to intervene. Look, so she sent some money to her mom. That is hardly grounds to void the entire agreement. A judge will laugh at this. You have to prove malice. You have to prove she was hiding it. I smiled. It was the same cold smile I had worn at the restaurant. I do not have to prove it, Blanton. Your client's son-in-law already did it for me. O'Malley reached into the folder one last time. He pulled out a large color printout. It was a screenshot from Instagram. It was a post from Tyler's account dated 3 months ago. The photo showed a gleaming modern kitchen with marble countertops and stainless steel appliances. An older woman, Vanessa's mother, was standing in the middle of it, holding a glass of wine and smiling. The caption read, "So proud of the fam for making Grandma's dream come true. From the hood to the hills. Shout out to the secret stash for making it happen. Hashtag blessed. Hashtag renovation. Hashtag secure the bag." I pointed at the picture. Secure the bag, I read aloud. That is what they called my money, Vanessa. The bag. Vanessa stared at the photo. Her hands were shaking. She looked at the date. She looked at the caption. She realized in that moment that the idiot she had allowed to marry her daughter had just cost her $5 million. Tyler posted this, O'Malley said. He tagged the location. He even tagged the contractor. We subpoenaed the contractor's records yesterday. The invoices were paid directly from the account of Beatrice Davis, funded by the transfers from Vanessa Blackwood. Blanton looked at the photo. He looked at Vanessa. He closed his briefcase. You did not tell me about this, he whispered to her. I did not know, Vanessa whispered back. I told him not to post anything. I told him to keep his mouth shut. You committed fraud, Vanessa, I said. You embezzled marital funds to build an asset for a third party. Under the terms of the agreement, you signed that handwritten note you laughed at. You have forfeited your right to any assets acquired during the marriage. You leave with what you came with, which, as I recall, was a suitcase of debt and a bad attitude. Vanessa stood up. Her chair fell backward with a crash. She did not look at me. She did not look at O'Malley. She turned toward the glass door of the conference room. Tyler and Jasmine were sitting in the waiting area. They were laughing at something on Jasmine's phone. They looked up as Vanessa stormed out. Mom, Jasmine said, standing up. Did we win? Vanessa walked up to them. She did not speak. She raised her hand and slapped Tyler across the face. It was a sound like a pistol shot. Tyler stumbled back, holding his cheek, his eyes wide with shock. What the hell, Vanessa? You idiot, Vanessa screamed. You absolute moron. You posted the kitchen. You posted the damn kitchen on the internet. What kitchen? Tyler stammered. My mother's kitchen. Vanessa shrieked. The one I paid for. The one I told you was a secret. You tagged it. You hashtagged it. You gave him the evidence. Jasmine looked between her mother and her husband. Wait. What does that mean? It means we lost everything, Vanessa cried, falling to her knees in the middle of the lobby. It means we are homeless. It means he knows. I walked to the doorway of the conference room. O'Malley stood beside me. We watched them, the perfect family unraveling on the cheap carpet of a mediator's office. Mr. Blackwood, O'Malley said quietly, shall I proceed with the eviction notice for the mother's house in Georgia? The forensic accounting shows the funds used to build it were stolen. Technically, you own that kitchen. I looked at Vanessa sobbing on the floor. I looked at Tyler trying to hide behind Jasmine. Do it, I said. Take the kitchen. Take the house. Take it all. I turned back to the table and picked up the handwritten prenup. I folded it carefully and put it in my pocket. They thought I was old. They thought I was slow. They forgot that I spent 40 years negotiating with unions and shipping magnates. I know how to read the fine print, and I know how to spot a leak. Tyler was the leak, and Vanessa was the sinking ship. I walked past them toward the elevator. Cyrus, Vanessa called out from the floor. Cyrus, please, where am I supposed to go? I pressed the down button. I hear the kitchen in Georgia is very nice, Vanessa. I suggest you go visit it before the sheriff arrives. The elevator doors opened. I stepped inside. As the doors closed, I saw Blanton walking away from them, shaking his head. Even the cheap lawyer knew when to cut his losses. Phase 2 was complete. They were broke. They were exposed. And they were turning on each other. But I was not done. Vanessa still had one card left to play. She would try to hurt me where she thought I was vulnerable. She would try to attack my mind. She was going to call the police. She was going to say I was crazy. Let her try. I had a surprise waiting for her, a surprise named Zoe, and when my daughter arrived, the game would change from checkers to chess. And I never lose at chess. The flashing blue lights of a police cruiser cut through the darkness of my living room. It was 8 o'clock in the evening. I was sitting in my armchair nursing a glass of bourbon and listening to Miles Davis. I had expected a quiet night after the chaos of the morning. I should have known better. Vanessa was cornered, and a cornered rat does not sleep. It bites. The pounding on the front door was aggressive. It was the knock of authority that had already made up its mind. I stood up slowly. My joints ached, but I straightened my spine. I walked to the door. I opened it to find 2 uniformed officers. One was young with a buzz cut and a hand resting nervously on his holster. The other was older, tired-looking with a notepad in his hand. Behind them stood Vanessa. She was wearing a torn blouse and her mascara was smeared down her cheeks. She was shivering theatrically in the night air. "Help me," she sobbed, pointing a shaking finger at me. "He is having another episode." "He threatened to kill me. He said the government is watching us. He is not lucid. Please, you have to take him." The young officer stepped forward. He stepped into my house without asking. "Mr. Blackwood, step back," he ordered. His voice was loud and slow, as if he were speaking to a child or an idiot. I did not step back. I stood my ground. "Officers." "Do you have a warrant?" I asked calmly. "We do not need a warrant for a welfare check on a senior citizen in mental distress," the older officer said. "Your wife claims you are suffering from dementia and have become violent. She says there is a weapon in the house." I looked at Vanessa. She covered her face with her hands, peeking through her fingers to check the performance. It was a good performance. She was playing the terrified victim perfectly. She knew that if she could get me committed on a 72-hour psychiatric hold, she would have 3 days alone in the house. 3 days to find the cash. 3 days to find the documents. 3 days to loot the kingdom while the king was in a padded room. "There is no weapon," I said, "and I am perfectly sane. My wife is upset because I cut off her credit cards this morning. This is a civil dispute, not a medical emergency." "He is lying," Vanessa shrieked. "He does not know what day it is. He thinks it is 1990. He threw a vase at me. Look at my arm." She held up her arm. There was a faint red mark there. It looked like she had pinched herself. "Sir," the young officer said, stepping closer, "we need you to come with us, just for an evaluation. If you are fine, the doctors will release you. But we cannot leave you here if you are a danger to yourself or others." "I am not going anywhere," I said. The officer reached for his handcuffs. "Sir, do not make this difficult. Turn around and place your hands behind your back." I felt the cold metal of the handcuffs brush against my wrist. I felt the indignity of it. 70 years of building a legacy only to be dragged out of my own home like a common criminal because a gold digger learned how to cry on cue. Vanessa was smiling behind her hands. She had won. Then tires screeched on the asphalt outside. It was not a normal car. It was a heavy engine, a V8 roaring up the driveway with aggressive speed. The officers turned. We all looked out the open door. A black Chevrolet Suburban with government plates slammed to a halt right behind the police cruiser, blocking it in. The headlights were blinding. The driver's door opened. A woman stepped out. She was 40 years old. She wore a tailored black suit that cost more than the police cruiser. Her hair was pulled back in a severe bun. She walked with a stride that could crack pavement. It was Zoe, my daughter. I had not seen her in 5 years. Not since the day I told her I was marrying Vanessa. Zoe had told me I was making a mistake. She had told me Vanessa was a predator. I had told her to respect my choice. She had walked out and she had never come back. Until tonight. She did not look at me. She marched straight up the steps, her heels clicking like gunshots on the stone. "Officer, step away from my father," she barked. Her voice was not loud, but it carried the weight of absolute authority. The young officer bristled. "Ma'am, this is a police matter. Step back or I will arrest you for obstruction." Zoe laughed. It was a cold, sharp sound. "Arrest me," she said. "Please do. I could use a vacation. But before you put those cuffs on me, you might want to look at this." She flipped open a leather wallet. A gold badge caught the porch light. Below it was an identification card from the Department of Justice. "My name is Zoe Blackwood," she said, stepping into the officer's personal space. "I am the United States Attorney for the Southern District, and you are currently trespassing on private property without a warrant, harassing a prominent business owner based on the testimony of a woman who is currently under investigation for federal wire fraud." The color drained from the young officer's face. He looked at the badge. He looked at Zoe. He looked at me. "Federal investigation," he stammered. Zoe turned to Vanessa. Vanessa had stopped crying. Her mouth was open. She looked like she had seen a ghost. "Hello, Vanessa," Zoe said. "You look terrible." "Zoe," Vanessa whispered. I didn't know you were in town." "I am always in town," Zoe said. "I have been watching. Did you think I stopped watching just because my father was too stubborn to call me?" She turned back to the officers. "My father is not senile. He is not violent. He is the victim of a coordinated extortion attempt. If you take him into custody, I will personally file a civil rights violation lawsuit against your precinct by 9 a.m. tomorrow morning. I will strip you of your badge and your pension before the ink dries on the paperwork. Do we have an understanding?" The older officer cleared his throat. He grabbed his partner's arm. "Ms. Blackwood, we were just following protocol. The reporting party claimed—" "The reporting party is a liar," Zoe cut him off. "Now get off my porch. Take your car and get out of here before I decide to make some calls." The officers did not hesitate. They uncuffed me. They mumbled apologies. They practically ran to their cruiser. Vanessa stood there alone on the porch. The police were gone. Her leverage was gone. And now she was facing the one person she feared more than me. Zoe turned to her. "You have 5 seconds to get out of my sight, Vanessa. If I see you on this property when the sun comes up, I will have you arrested for trespassing. And unlike the local police, I do not let people go." Vanessa looked at me. She looked for a hint of mercy. She found none. She ran. She ran down the driveway into the darkness, chasing after the police car like a lost dog. Zoe watched her go. She waited until the taillights disappeared around the bend. Then she turned to me. For a moment we just stood there. 5 years of silence hung between us. 5 years of pride. 5 years of missed birthdays and holidays. She looked older. There were fine lines around her eyes that hadn't been there before. She looked tired. But she looked strong. She looked like me. "You got old man," she said quietly. I nodded. "I did. You got sharp." "I had to," she said. "Someone had to watch your back while you were busy playing house with a viper." She walked past me into the house. She went straight to the liquor cabinet. She poured 2 glasses of my best bourbon. "Neat." She handed me one. "Sit down, Dad. We have work to do." We sat in the living room. The silence was gone, replaced by the hum of the refrigerator and the clink of ice. "I am sorry, Zoe," I said. It was the hardest thing I had ever said. "I was wrong. You were right. She was exactly what you said she was." Zoe took a sip of her drink. "I know," she said. I am not here for an apology, Dad. I am here because you are in trouble, and because Blackwoods do not let outsiders take what is ours. She reached into her briefcase. She pulled out a thick file folder. It was stamped with the seal of the Department of Justice. She threw it on the coffee table. It landed with a heavy thud. You handled Vanessa, she said. The prenup was smart. The eviction was good. But you missed the real threat. I frowned. What threat? Tyler, she said. Tyler, I asked. The yoga instructor. The boy who cannot change a tire. He is not a yoga instructor, Dad, Zoe said, leaning forward. He is a mule. I stared at her. A mule. We have been tracking a money laundering ring operating out of Miami for 2 years, she explained. They use shell companies to wash cash from illegal gambling operations. They set up fake consulting firms. They hire idiots who want to look rich but are too stupid to ask questions. She tapped the file. Tyler Vance is the registered agent for 3 LLCs that have moved $4 million in the last 18 months. He thinks he is a crypto investor. He thinks he is a genius, but he is just a signature. He is the fall guy. My mind raced. Tyler, the boy who lived in my guest house, the boy who drove my Tesla. Does he know I asked? He thinks it is a tax loophole, Zoe said. He does not know he is washing money for the cartel. But ignorance is not a defense in federal court. She looked me in the eye. Here is the problem, Dad. He used your address. He used the penthouse address. He used the Blackwood Logistics corporate mailing address for one of the accounts. I felt a cold sweat break out on my forehead. If he goes down, he could drag the company with him, I realized. They could freeze my assets. They could investigate my books. Exactly, Zoe said. That is why I am here. She took another sip of her drink. Her eyes were hard flinty. I can stop it, Dad. I can sever the link. I have built a case that isolates him. I can take him down without touching you or the company. I can put him in prison for 20 years. She paused. But I need your permission. Permission for what I asked. To break the vase to catch the rat, she said. She opened the file. She showed me a document. We raid him tomorrow. We take him down public and hard. But to do that, I need you to sign this affidavit. It states that you had no knowledge of his activities and that you are cooperating fully with the investigation. It also means you have to turn him over, Zoe said softly. He is family by marriage. If you sign this, you are sending your stepson-in-law to federal prison. There is no coming back from this. Vanessa will hate you forever. Jasmine will hate you. The community will talk. I looked at the document. I looked at the picture of Tyler stapled to the inside of the file. He was wearing sunglasses, holding a stack of cash, looking like a fool. He tried to destroy me, I said. He insulted me. He lived on my dime and plotted against me. I picked up a pen. Zoe watched me. Are you sure, Dad? This is the nuclear option. I looked at my daughter. My blood. The only person in the world who had ever truly loved me without conditions. I signed the paper. I pushed it back to her. He is not family, Zoe, I said. He is a parasite, and parasites need to be removed. Zoe smiled. It was a wolf smile. Good answer. She closed the file. Get some sleep, Dad. Tomorrow morning we are going hunting, and I promise you it will be a spectacle. She finished her drink and stood up. I have missed you, Dad, she said. I stood up and hugged her. I held her tight. I missed you too, Zoe. Thank you for coming back. She pulled away, adjusting her suit. I never left, she said. I was just waiting for you to wake up. She walked out the door. I watched her get into her government truck. I watched her drive away. I went back to my chair. I poured another drink. Vanessa thought she had problems today. She had no idea what was coming tomorrow. Her son-in-law was about to become federal property, and her daughter was about to become the wife of a felon. The game had changed. It was no longer about money. It was about freedom. And I was the one holding the keys. The sun was high over the city, but for Tyler and Jasmine, the nightmare was just waking up. They had fled my house in a panic and retreated to the one place they believed was untouchable, the penthouse. It was a 4,000 square foot glass box in the sky located in the most exclusive building in downtown. It had a private elevator, a wraparound terrace, and a view that made you feel like a god looking down on insects. For 3 years they had lived there. They threw parties there. They posted photos of the sunset from the balcony with captions about the grind and the hustle. They truly believed I had bought it for them. They believe this because I let them believe it. I handed them the keys 3 years ago as a wedding present. I told them, welcome home. I never told them I signed the deed. I never told them I held the title. Because I didn't. I am a businessman. I do not buy depreciating assets in an inflated real estate market for two people who cannot change a light bulb without calling a TaskRabbit. I leased it. I signed a 36-month corporate lease prepaid in full. It was a tax write-off for Blackwood Logistics housing for executive consultants. It cost me $15,000 a month, a lot of money to most people. But the price of peace is often high. The lease expired yesterday at midnight. I had received 3 emails from the management company over the last month asking if I wanted to renew. I sent them one reply: vacate upon expiration. So while Tyler and Jasmine were sleeping off the trauma of the tow trucks cocooned in 600 thread count sheets thinking they were safe in their fortress, the elevator doors opened in their private foyer. It was 10 in the morning. Mr. Henderson, the building manager, stepped out. He was accompanied by 2 uniformed police officers and a locksmith. Mr. Henderson was a man who did not like Tyler. Tyler had called him the help on 3 separate occasions when requesting packages be brought up. Henderson had a long memory. He did not knock gently. He pounded on the heavy oak door with a fist like a hammer. Inside, Tyler woke up with a start. He stumbled out of bed. Jasmine groaned, pulling the duvet over her head. Tyler walked to the door, rubbing his eyes. He checked the video monitor. He saw the uniforms. He panicked. He thought it was about the money laundering. He thought Zoe had sent the cavalry already. He opened the door a crack, leaving the safety chain on. "Can I help you, officers?" he asked, his voice trembling. Henderson stepped into the frame. "Open the door, Mr. Vance. We are coming in." Tyler frowned. "Henderson, what is this? I am calling the concierge. You cannot bring cops up here. This is private property." "It is private property," Henderson agreed. "But it is not your property." He held up a document against the crack in the door. "Your lease expired at 12 o'clock 1 minute this morning. The tenant on record, Mr. Cyrus Blackwood, has declined to renew. He has surrendered possession of the unit to the building management. You are currently trespassing." Tyler laughed, a nervous, high-pitched sound. "You are crazy. Cyrus bought this place. He gave it to us. It is a wedding gift." Henderson smiled. It was the smile of a man who enjoys his job. "He gave you keys, Mr. Vance. He gave you access. He did not give you equity. I have the title right here. The building owners hold it. Mr. Blackwood was just a tenant, and you were just a guest who has overstayed his welcome by 10 hours, he signaled the locksmith. "Drill it." The sound of the drill biting into the metal lock was loud and violent. Tyler backed away, stumbling over his own feet. Jasmine ran into the living room, wrapping a silk robe around herself. "What is that noise?" Tyler, who is at the door. The door swung open. The chain snapped with a sharp crack. Henderson walked in, followed by the police. "You have 15 minutes to vacate the premises," he announced, checking his watch. "Whatever you can carry, you keep. Whatever is left behind goes into storage at your expense. Or the dumpster." "I prefer the dumpster," Jasmine screamed. She looked at the police. She looked at Tyler. "Do something," she yelled at her husband. "Tell them who we are." "I am trying," Tyler shouted back. "But he says Cyrus didn't buy it. He says he rented it." Jasmine's face went slack. Rented. I could imagine the gears turning in her head. All the lies she had told her friends. All the bragging about her portfolio. All the dinner parties where she looked down on renters. She grabbed her phone. She dialed my number. I was sitting in my office reviewing the quarterly reports for the company. My phone buzzed. Jasmine. I declined the call. She called again. I blocked the number. The message was clear. "You are on your own." Henderson clapped his hands. 14 minutes, folks. I suggest you start packing." And then the second wave hit. The service elevator in the kitchen dinged. The doors slid open. 4 men in blue coveralls walked in. They wore gloves. They carried moving blankets and dollies. The logo on their shirts read "Elite Corporate Staging." One of the movers walked straight to the living room. He walked up to the massive beige sectional sofa that Jasmine loved. The sofa she claimed was imported Italian leather. He grabbed the corner and lifted it. His partner slid a dolly underneath. Hey, Jasmine shrieked, running toward them. That is my sofa. That is custom. Do not touch that. The mover ignored her. He looked at his manifest. Item 402. Sectional. Beige. Synthetic blend. Return to warehouse. Synthetic blend. Jasmine froze. Synthetic. She looked at the vase on the table. The one she said was Ming Dynasty. Item 511. Blue vase. Reproduction. Target. She looked at the art on the walls, the abstract pieces she lectured guests about. Item 600. Canvas print. Hotel grade. The reality crashed down on her. Nothing was real. None of it. When I set up the penthouse, I did not hire an interior designer. I hired a staging company, the kind that furnishes model homes to make them look lived in. I rented the furniture. I rented the art. I rented the rugs. It was all a stage set, a backdrop for their vanity. And now the play was over and the props were going back. Jasmine watched as they rolled her fake Italian sofa into the elevator. She watched them take the lamps. She watched them take the dining table. She ran to the bedroom. My clothes, she screamed. You cannot take my clothes. She flung open the closet doors. It was a massive walk-in closet filled with designer labels, Chanel, Gucci, Prada, rows and rows of dresses and bags. This was her armor, her identity. She started grabbing armfuls of clothes, throwing them into black garbage bags that one of the officers had kindly provided. Tyler was doing the same in his closet, shoving suits into bags. Grab the Birkins, Jasmine yelled. Grab the bags, they are worth more than the car. Tyler grabbed the orange Hermes boxes. He stacked them by the door. I watched all of this in my mind's eye because I knew exactly what was in those closets. Years ago, when Jasmine started demanding a clothing allowance, I made a decision. I gave her a credit card. I told her it was for a personal shopper service I used. She sent her wish list to the shopper. The shopper sent the items. What Jasmine did not know was that the shopper was a woman named Maria who worked out of a warehouse in New Jersey. Maria specialized in high-quality replicas, super fakes. The Birkin bag Jasmine was clutching to her chest cost me $200. The Chanel jacket, $150. The Louboutin heels, $80. I did not do it to be cheap. I did it to see if she would notice. I wanted to know if she truly appreciated quality or if she just appreciated the label. She never noticed. Not once in 3 years. She wore plastic and thought it was silk. She walked in cardboard and thought it was leather. She was hugging garbage bags full of counterfeit goods, thinking she was saving a fortune. Time is up, Henderson announced. The apartment was stripped bare. The staging company was efficient. In 20 minutes, they had cleared 4,000 square feet. Tyler and Jasmine stood in the foyer, surrounded by black plastic bags. They looked like refugees from a fashion show that had gone terribly wrong. Out, Henderson said, pointing to the door. They dragged their bags to the elevator. They went down to the lobby. They stood on the sidewalk. It was noon. The city was busy. People walked by in business suits, heading to lunch. They looked at the couple standing amidst a pile of garbage bags. Tyler tried to call an Uber. His account was suspended. Payment method invalid. Jasmine tried to call a Lyft. Same result. They had no car. They had no apartment. They had no credit. They had to call a regular taxi. And they had to pay cash. Where do we go? Tyler asked, his voice hollow. Jasmine looked at him. Her mascara was running. Her hair was a mess. We have to go to Grandma's, she whispered. Mom is there. Vanessa's mother lived in a neighborhood called The Heights. It was a generous name. It was not high and it was not nice. It was a row of small, crumbling houses built in the 50s. I had given Vanessa $200,000 to renovate that house. Or rather, she had stolen $200,000 to renovate it. But Vanessa, being Vanessa, had not spent the money on the house. She had spent it on herself. She had bought jewelry she hid in a safety deposit box. She had gambled. She had loaned money to friends to look big. She had put a new coat of paint on the front door and installed a marble island in the kitchen to take a photo for Instagram. The rest of the house was rotting. The roof leaked. The plumbing groaned. The heat did not work. The taxi dropped Tyler and Jasmine off in front of the peeling white fence. The driver demanded payment up front before he unlocked the trunk. Jasmine had to dig through her purse to find the emergency cash she kept for valets. They dragged their bags up the cracked walkway. The grass was overgrown. A dog barked aggressively from the neighbor's yard. Vanessa opened the door. She was wearing the same clothes she had left my house in. She looked exhausted. Behind her, the house was dark and smelled of mildew and old frying oil. It was a stark contrast to the climate-controlled, lavender-scented air of the penthouse. They dragged their bags into the small living room. It was crowded with old furniture covered in plastic. "This is it," Tyler said, looking around in horror. "This is where we live now." Vanessa sat on a lumpy armchair. He took everything she said quietly. He took the house. He took the accounts. Jasmine dropped her bag. It split open, spilling fake designer dresses onto the dirty carpet. "You said you fixed up Grandma's house," she accused Vanessa. "You said it was a palace inside. You sent us photos." "I fixed the kitchen," Vanessa snapped defensively. "The kitchen is nice. We cannot sleep in the kitchen." "Mom," Jasmine screamed. "Look at this place. It is a dump." Tyler kicked the wall. A piece of plaster fell off. "This is your fault," he shouted at Jasmine. "You and your big mouth at dinner. If you hadn't insulted his suit, we would still be in the penthouse." "Don't you dare blame me," Jasmine yelled back, getting in his face. "You are the one who posted the kitchen on Instagram. You are the leak, Tyler. You are the reason he found out about the money." "I was trying to build a brand," Tyler screamed. "You built a disaster," Vanessa shouted, standing up. "Both of you shut up. My head is splitting." They stood there in the cramped, dark living room screaming at each other. The veneer of their sophistication had peeled away along with the paint on the walls. They were not royalty. They were not elite. They were three crabs in a bucket clawing at each other as the water started to boil. And in my office 10 miles away, I closed the file on the penthouse. The lease termination was signed. The staging company had confirmed retrieval of assets. I leaned back in my chair. They were fighting now. Good. Hunger makes people angry. Discomfort makes them turn on each other. But I wasn't done. Tyler still thought he had a future. He thought he could get a job. He thought his resume meant something. He was wrong. I picked up my phone. I scrolled through my contacts until I found the number for the Chamber of Commerce. The chairman was a man I had played golf with for 30 years. "Hello, Bill," I said when he answered. "It is Cyrus. I need a favor. There is a young man named Tyler Vance looking for work. I want to make sure his application gets the attention it deserves." And by attention, I meant the shredder. Phase 3 was in motion. The isolation was beginning. They had a roof over their heads for now, but soon even that would be gone. And when the walls finally closed in, they would realize that the only thing colder than the winter wind was the heart of a man who had been taken for granted one too many times. The week dragged on, and the reality of poverty began to settle into the bones of my estranged family like a damp cold. Tyler was the first to try and claw his way out. He still believed in the myth of his own competence. He believed that his resume, which was padded with consulting gigs I had invented for him and a degree I had paid for, was a golden ticket. He woke up on Thursday morning in the cramped guest room of Vanessa's mother's house. He put on his one remaining designer suit, which was wrinkled from being stuffed in a garbage bag. He ironed it on a kitchen table that smelled of old grease. He told Vanessa and Jasmine that he would be back by noon with a 6-figure job offer. He was delusional. He headed into the financial district. He walked into the offices of Sterling and Holt, a firm where I happened to know the managing partner. Tyler marched up to the receptionist and demanded an interview. He flashed his smile. He dropped my name. He thought being Cyrus Blackwood's son-in-law opened doors. He did not realize that I had spent the last 24 hours changing the locks. I had made 5 phone calls. That was all it took. In the world of black business ownership in this city, there is a hierarchy. It is an old-school network built on respect and memory. We remember who stood with us during the riots. We remember who gave loans when the banks said no. My name is not just a brand, it is a currency, and I had spent it to buy Tyler's unemployment. Tyler sat in the waiting room for an hour. Finally, a junior associate came out. He did not invite Tyler back. He stood in the lobby holding Tyler's resume by the corner as if it were a used tissue. Mr. Vance, the associate, said loud enough for the entire room to hear. "We have reviewed your application. We noticed a significant gap in your actual work history." Tyler stood up, adjusting his tie. "I was a consultant for Blackwood Logistics. I handled high-level strategy." The associate smiled. It was a shark's smile. "We called Blackwood Logistics for a reference check. They have no record of you ever being on the payroll. They said you were a guest who occasionally used the conference room Wi-Fi to download movies." Tyler turned red. "That is a lie. Cyrus is just angry." The associate dropped the resume into the recycling bin next to the desk. "We do not hire liars, Mr. Vance, and we certainly do not hire men who bite the hand that feeds them. Mr. Blackwood sends his regards. Please leave before security escorts you out." Tyler stormed out. He went to the next firm. The answer was a flat no. He went to a third. The security guard did not even let him pass the turnstile. By noon, he was sweating through his suit, walking the pavement in shoes that were not made for walking. He realized then that his name meant nothing. His degree meant nothing. Without my endorsement, he was just another man in a suit looking for a handout. The city which had been his playground was now a fortress with the gates slammed shut. While Tyler was learning the hard way that loyalty is the only currency that matters, Jasmine was attempting a different kind of liquidation. She had managed to smuggle one item out of the penthouse before the eviction. It was a Himalayan Birkin bag, or at least she thought it was. It was actually a high-grade replica I had sourced from a contact in Shenzhen, but to the untrained eye it looked like $50,000 of leather and hardware. She walked into Golden Loan. It was a high-end pawn shop on 47th Street run by a man named Solomon. Solomon and I have played chess in the park every Sunday for 15 years. He knows my family, he knows my business, and he knew exactly what to do when a desperate girl walked in with a bag she did not pay for. Jasmine placed the bag on the counter. She tried to look bored. She tried to look like a wealthy woman simply clearing out her closet. "I want $40,000 for it," she said, "cash." Solomon put on his jeweler's loupe. He inspected the stitching. He inspected the hardware. He took his time. He hummed a little tune. "Beautiful piece," he said. "Do you have the receipt? I lost it." Jasmine lied. "But you can see it is authentic. It was a gift from my stepfather, Cyrus Blackwood." Solomon looked up. "Ah, Cyrus, a good man." He reached under the counter. He did not reach for cash. He pressed a silent button. "I need to verify the serial number," Solomon said. "Just give me a moment." Jasmine tapped her nails on the glass. "Hurry up. I have a lunch reservation." She did not have a reservation. She had a hunger pang and no money for a sandwich. 5 minutes later, 2 uniformed police officers walked into the shop. Jasmine turned around annoyed. She thought they were customers. "Ma'am," one officer said. "Is this your bag?" "Yes," Jasmine said. "I am selling it." The officer shook his head. "We received a report of a stolen luxury item matching this description. The serial number was flagged in our system this morning." "Stolen," Jasmine shrieked. "It is mine. My stepfather gave it to me." Solomon leaned over the counter. He held up a piece of paper. It was a copy of the original purchase order I had sent him an hour ago. Mr. Blackwood faxed over the documentation, Solomon said calmly. "He listed this item as stolen from his residence yesterday. He has the receipt. You do not." Jasmine lunged for the bag. "It is mine, you thief!" The officer grabbed her arm. She fought back. She scratched the officer's face. That was a mistake. They spun her around. They slammed her against the glass counter. The cold metal of handcuffs clicked around her wrists. "You are under arrest for possession of stolen property and assaulting an officer." They dragged her out. She was screaming my name. She was screaming that I was the devil. People on the street stopped to watch. They took videos. Jasmine Vance, the girl who thought she was royalty, was being shoved into the back of a squad car like a common criminal. She spent 4 hours in a holding cell. It smelled of urine and bleach. She sat on a metal bench in her designer dress, surrounded by women who did not care about her master's degree. She used her one phone call to call Vanessa. Vanessa was sitting in the dark living room of her mother's house when the phone rang. She listened to Jasmine sobbing about bail money. She listened to Tyler walking in the door, defeated and jobless. Vanessa looked around the room. The peeling paint, the water stains on the ceiling, the pile of garbage bags that contained her life. She realized then that legal battles take time. Divorce settlements take years. She did not have years. She did not have weeks. She barely had days. The hunger was gnawing at her. The humiliation was burning her skin. She needed a shortcut. She needed a way to force my hand. She hung up on Jasmine. She looked at Tyler. "Get out," she said. Tyler looked at her. "What?" "Go get Jasmine. Figure it out. I need the house to myself." Tyler left, too tired to argue. Vanessa went to her mother's medicine cabinet. She pushed aside the heart medication and the blood thinners. She found what she was looking for, a bottle of strong sleeping pills, the kind that knock you out for 12 hours. She took the bottle to the kitchen. She poured the pills onto the counter. She found a heavy spoon and began to crush them. The sound of the crushing was rhythmic. It sounded like a drum beat. She swept the white powder into a small plastic bag. She was done playing the victim. She was done waiting for lawyers. She was going to play the loving wife one last time. She would go to my house. She would cry. She would beg for forgiveness. She would offer to make me tea, my favorite herbal tea, and once I was unconscious, she would guide my hand. She would take my thumb and press it against the biometric scanner of my phone. She would open my banking app. She would transfer the funds. Or better yet, she would find the physical deed to the house and force my limp hand to sign it. It was desperate. It was dangerous. It was a felony. But Vanessa was a drowning woman, and a drowning woman will climb a ladder made of knives if she thinks it leads to air. She put the powder in her purse. She checked her makeup in the hall mirror. She applied fresh lipstick. She practiced her sad smile. She walked out the door. She did not know that I was waiting. She did not know that Zoe had installed cameras in every room of my house, including the kitchen. She did not know that she was walking into a trap that would snap shut the moment she poured the water. I sat in my study watching the monitors. I saw her car pull up to the gate. I pressed the button to let her in. "Come in, Vanessa. The tea is ready." The gate buzzer sounded like a death knell in the quiet of my study. I watched the black and white monitor. Vanessa's car was idling at the entrance. She looked small inside the vehicle. She looked defeated. I pressed the button to open the gate. The heavy iron wing swung inward. I watched her drive up the long, winding path that led to the house she had once thought she owned. I turned off the monitor. I sat in my leather chair. I waited. The front door opened. Her footsteps echoed in the foyer. They were hesitant steps, slow, dragging. She walked into the study and stood in the doorway. She was a masterpiece of manufactured sorrow. Her makeup was gone. Her hair was pulled back in a severe, messy bun. She wore a simple gray sweater and jeans. She looked like she had been crying for days. "Cyrus," she whispered. Her voice cracked perfectly on the second syllable. I did not stand up. I did not offer her a chair. I simply looked at her. "What do you want, Vanessa?" She fell to her knees. It was a dramatic drop. Her knees hit the Persian rug with a thud that must have hurt, but she did not flinch. She covered her face with her hands and began to sob. It was a deep, guttural sound. If I did not know better, I would have believed it. If I had not seen her crushing pills an hour ago via the hidden camera Zoe installed in her mother's kitchen, I might have felt a flicker of pity. "I am so sorry," she wailed. "I ruined everything. I was greedy. I was stupid. I listened to my mother. I listened to society. I forgot the only thing that mattered, us." I watched her performance. It was impressive. She crawled forward across the rug, reaching for my hand. I let her take it. Her hands were cold. They were shaking. "Please, Cyrus," she begged, looking up at me with wet, red eyes. "I do not want the money. I do not want the house. I just want my husband back. I have nowhere to go. My mother's house is falling apart. Jasmine hates me. Tyler is useless. You are the only good thing I ever had." I pulled my hand away slowly. "You made your choice, Vanessa," I said, my voice devoid of emotion. "You chose them. I know," she cried. "And I was wrong. Please let me make it up to you. Let me take care of you tonight. You look tired. You look exhausted. Let me make you some tea, your favorite herbal blend, the one that helps you sleep." There it was, the hook. I leaned back in my chair. I rubbed my temples, feigning a headache. "I am tired," I admitted. "It has been a long week." She stood up quickly, wiping her tears. "I will make it," she said. "Just sit there. Relax. I will take care of everything." She rushed out of the room toward the kitchen. I did not need to follow her. I pulled my tablet from the drawer. I opened the app that controlled the internal security cameras. Zoe had installed them months ago when she first suspected Tyler was using my address. They were high definition. They recorded audio. I watched Vanessa in the kitchen. The moment she crossed the threshold, her posture changed. The slump in her shoulders vanished. She moved with purpose. She opened the cabinet where I kept the tea. She took down a mug. She filled it with water. Then she reached into her purse. She pulled out the small plastic bag of white powder. She looked over her shoulder, checking the empty hallway. Then she dumped the entire contents of the bag into the mug. She stirred it vigorously with a spoon. She put the tea bag in. She waited for it to steep. She held the mug up to the light, checking for sediment. She smiled. It was not a nice smile. It was the smile of a butcher sharpening a knife. I put the tablet away. She walked back into the study, carrying the steaming mug with 2 hands. She looked like a penitent servant. "Here," she said, placing the mug on a coaster in front of me. "Drink this. It will help you rest." I looked at the dark liquid. The steam carried the scent of chamomile and mint. But underneath that, there was a faint chemical, acrid smell. the smell of desperation. "Thank you, Vanessa," I said. I lifted the mug. Her eyes were locked on it. Her pupils were dilated. She was holding her breath. I brought it to my lips. I stopped. "Vanessa," I said, putting the mug down, "could you close the drapes? The streetlights are giving me a headache." She hesitated. She did not want to take her eyes off me, but she had to play the part of the solicitous wife. "Of course, darling," she said. She turned her back to me, walking toward the large bay window. In that split second, I moved. I poured the entire contents of the mug into the large potted fern that stood beside my desk. The soil drank the poisoned water instantly. I put the empty mug back on the coaster. I wiped my mouth with the back of my hand. Vanessa closed the drapes and turned around. She looked at the mug. It was empty. "You drank it fast," she said, a flicker of surprise in her voice. "I was thirsty," I said. I sat back. I let my eyelids droop. I let my mouth hang open slightly. "Are you okay?" she asked, stepping closer. "I feel dizzy," I mumbled. My words were slurred. "Very tired. Just sleep." "Cyrus," she said, her voice dropping an octave. "Just close your eyes." I let my head loll forward onto my chest. I let my arms dangle over the sides of the chair. I slowed my breathing, forcing it into a heavy rhythmic snore. I felt her hand on my shoulder. She shook me. "Cyrus! Cyrus, can you hear me?" I did not move. I did not react. She shook me harder. Then she slapped my cheek. It was not a hard slap, but it was disrespectful. "He is out," she whispered. She pulled her phone from her pocket. "Get in here," she hissed into the receiver. "He is down. Hurry up." I lay there, eyes closed, listening. 2 minutes later, I heard the front door open, running footsteps, heavy breathing. Tyler and Jasmine burst into the room. They must have been waiting in Vanessa's car, huddled in the back seat, or parked just down the street. "Is he dead?" Tyler asked, his voice shrill with panic. "No, you idiot," Vanessa snapped. "He is asleep. I gave him enough sedatives to knock out a horse. He will be out for 12 hours. Now move." They surrounded me. I could smell them. Vanessa's stale perfume, Tyler's sweat, Jasmine's fear. "Search him," Vanessa ordered. "Find the key to the filing cabinet. Find the deed." I felt hands on me, violating hands. Tyler reached into my jacket pocket. Jasmine patted down my trousers. It took every ounce of my will not to break their fingers. I lay limp, a heavy sack of meat, while my family looted my body. "Nothing here," Tyler said. "Just a handkerchief and some mints." "Check the desk," Jasmine said. She started pulling drawers open, dumping the contents onto the floor. "Pens, paper clips, ledger books." "We do not need the deed," Vanessa said. "We just need access." She grabbed my right hand. Her fingers were cold and clammy. She pulled my thumb toward her phone. "What are you doing?" Jasmine asked. "Biometrics," Vanessa said. "I am logging into his banking app. I am transferring everything." She pressed my thumb against the screen of her phone. I heard the little beep of a failed recognition. She tried again, harder, jamming my thumb against the glass. "It is not working," she cursed. "He must have changed the settings. Or his hands are too cold." "Damn it," Tyler swore. "What do we do?" "We need money, Vanessa." The loan sharks called me again. They said they are coming for my knees. "The safe," Vanessa said. She looked at the painting on the wall behind my desk. It was a portrait of my grandfather. Behind that painting, he keeps cash there. He keeps the hard drives. He keeps the emergency fund. She ran to the wall. She pulled the heavy frame aside. It swung open on hinges, revealing a steel wall safe. "Do you know the combination?" Jasmine asked. "I think so," Vanessa said. She was sweating. I saw him open it once. "It is his birthday, 1954. She spun the dial. 1954. The handle did not budge. "Try his mother's birthday," Tyler suggested. "I do not know his mother's birthday," Vanessa screamed. "Try 000, Jasmine said. "Old people always use zeros." Vanessa spun the dial. 000. Click. The handle turned. "See?" Vanessa gasped, triumphant. "I told you. He is a simple man." She pulled the heavy steel door open. They all crowded around. Their greed was a physical force sucking the air out of the room. They expected stacks of $100 bills. They expected gold bars. They expected salvation. I opened one eye, just a slit. I watched their faces. The safe was empty. Well, not completely empty. There was no money, there were no deeds, there were no diamonds, there was a single piece of white paper taped to the back wall of the safe. Vanessa reached in. Her hand was trembling violently. She ripped the paper off the wall. "What is it?" Tyler asked. "Is it a check?" Vanessa stared at the paper. Her face went gray, her knees buckled. "Read it," Jasmine demanded, snatching the paper from her mother's hand. Jasmine read it aloud. Her voice started strong and ended in a whisper. "Smile, my children, you are on TV." For a second, nobody moved. They did not understand. Then a red light blinked. It came from the bookshelf directly across from the desk. A tiny red LED light hidden between the spines of two leather-bound encyclopedias. Tyler turned slowly. He looked at the light. He looked at me. I opened my eyes. I sat up. I straightened my tie. "Hello, family," I said, my voice booming in the small room. They screamed. All three of them. It was a collective sound of pure, unadulterated terror. Tyler jumped back, knocking over a lamp. Jasmine dropped the paper. Vanessa fell against the desk, clutching her chest. You drank the tea," Vanessa stammered. "I saw you." "I watered the plant, Vanessa," I said, pointing to the fern. "It looked thirsty. Unlike you, I do not poison the things that keep me alive." I stood up. I picked up the remote control from my desk. I pressed a button. The large flat-screen TV mounted on the wall flickered to life. It showed a split screen. On the left was a live feed of the study. We were watching ourselves. On the right was a view of a large, crowded room. There were chandeliers. There were round tables with white cloths. There were people dressed in their Sunday best holding wine glasses. Vanessa gasped. That is the church hall." It was. It was the annual fundraiser gala for the First Baptist Church. The church where Vanessa was the treasurer. The church where she had spent 3 years building a reputation as a pious, charitable woman. And on the massive projection screen behind the podium in that church hall, everyone was watching the live feed from my study. 500 people, the mayor, the pastor, the city council, all of Vanessa's friends, all of her social rivals. They were watching her drug her husband. They were watching her loot his pockets. They were watching her crack his safe. I picked up my phone. I dialed Zoe. "Cut the feed," I said. The screen on the wall went black, but I knew it was too late. The damage was done. The feed had been running for 20 minutes. They had seen everything. Vanessa looked at the TV. She looked at me. She realized that her life, her reputation, her social standing had just been incinerated. You broadcast this," she whispered. "Zoe broadcast it," I corrected. "She is very good with technology." My phone buzzed. It was a text from the pastor. "Cyrus, I am praying for you. Vanessa is removed from the board effective immediately. Police are on the way." I looked at my family, my wife the poisoner, my stepdaughter the thief, my son-in-law the mule. "You should run," I said, checking my watch. "The police station is only 10 minutes away." But given the traffic from the church, it might take them 15. Tyler bolted. He did not wait for anyone. He ran out the door. Jasmine looked at her mother, then at me. She started to cry again. Vanessa did not run. She sank into the chair I had vacated. She looked at her hands. Why, she asked. "Why did you do this?" "Because, Vanessa," I said, leaning over her, "you tried to take my mind. You tried to take my dignity. You tried to take my life." I picked up the mug from the coaster. I held it under her nose. The smell of the sedatives was strong. "Did you really think I would let you turn me into a vegetable so you could buy handbags?" She did not answer. Sirens wailed in the distance. They were getting closer. "I suggest you freshen up, Vanessa," I said. "Mug shots last forever." She looked up at me. Her eyes were dead. "I hate you," she whispered. "I know," I said, "but right now that is the least of your problems." I walked out of the study. I walked to the front door. I opened it to let the police in. The night air was cool. I took a deep breath. It tasted like justice. It tasted like freedom. And somewhere in the distance I heard the sound of a gavel coming down. The screen on my study wall was still flickering with the remnants of a life that was currently imploding. On the left side was the empty view of my study where the ghost of my family's betrayal still hung in the air. On the right was the live feed from the First Baptist Church. To understand the magnitude of what was happening, you have to understand the church. It is not just a place of worship. In our community, it is the throne room. It is where deals are made, where reputations are minted, and where social standing is solidified. The annual fundraising gala is the crown jewel of the social calendar. Tickets cost $500 a plate. The mayor attends. The city council attends. And Vanessa was the treasurer. She was the face of the organization. She was supposed to be there tonight. She had told the committee she would be late. She told them she had a family emergency. She told them she was tending to her sick husband. It was the perfect cover for a murder. She thought she would kill me quietly and then arrive at the gala in time for dessert, playing the grieving widow before the body was even cold. But she never made it to dessert. Instead, the 500 guests at the gala were treated to a different kind of show. Zoe had hacked the main projection system. She had replaced the slideshow of charitable works with the live feed from my hidden cameras. I watched the screen. The church hall was in chaos. The video of Vanessa dumping the white powder into my tea had played on a loop for 10 minutes. The audio was crystal clear. Her voice cold and calculating, saying, "Just sleep, Cyrus." The guests watched as she rifled through my pockets. They watched as she tried to force my thumb onto her phone. They watched as she cracked the safe and found the note. The reaction was visceral. I saw women in Sunday hats covering their mouths in horror. I saw the deacons standing up, overturning chairs in their haste to get to the stage. I saw the pastor, Reverend Thomas, a man who had baptized Vanessa, standing at the podium, his face a mask of biblical fury. In my study, Vanessa was staring at the same screen. The reality of what she was seeing finally pierced through her shock. "They can see me," she whispered. Her voice was a dry rattle. "Everyone. They can all see me." She looked at me. Her eyes were wild. "You ruined me," she screamed. "You ruined my name." "I did not ruin your name, Vanessa," I said calmly. "I just showed everyone who was wearing it." She scrambled to her feet. She looked at the door. "I have to stop it," she said. "I have to explain. I have to tell them it is a deep fake. I have to tell them you manipulated the footage." She was delusional. She thought she could talk her way out of a video where she explicitly discussed murder, but panic makes people do irrational things. She ran. She did not run toward the police station. She ran toward her car. She ran toward the church. I did not stop her. I did not call the police to block the driveway. I wanted her to go. I wanted her to face the congregation. I wanted the final act of this tragedy to happen on the stage she had built for herself. I watched her car fishtail down the driveway, spraying gravel. I picked up my phone. I called Zoe. "She is coming to the church," I said. "Make sure the doors are open." I heard Zoe chuckle. "They are open, Dad, and the police are already there waiting in the vestry. We are going to let her hang herself." I sat back and watched the screen. It took Vanessa 12 minutes to drive to the church. During those 12 minutes, the atmosphere in the gala hall shifted from shock to anger. The initial silence was replaced by a roar of indignation. People were shouting. They were demanding answers. They were looking at the empty treasurer's chair at the head table as if it were an electric chair. Then the double doors at the back of the hall flew open. Vanessa burst in. She looked like a woman possessed. Her hair was flying wild. Her clothes were disheveled from the struggle in my study. She was sweating. She ran down the center aisle screaming, "It is a lie! It is all a lie! He made it up!" The room went silent. 500 heads turned to look at her. She stopped in front of the stage panting. She pointed at the massive screen where her own image was still freezing on the moment she held the poisoned mug. "Turn it off!" she shrieked at the tech booth. "Turn it off right now!" Reverend Thomas stepped forward. He held a microphone. His voice boomed through the speakers, deep and resonant. "Vanessa," he said. His tone was not welcoming. It was a judgment. "Pastor," she cried, running toward him, "you have to believe me. Cyrus is sick. He is senile. He doctored the video. He is trying to frame me." The Reverend looked down at her. He looked at the screen. He looked back at her. "We saw you, Vanessa," he said. "We heard you. We heard you call your husband a vegetable. We heard you plan to steal his money. We heard you mock this church and the people in it. I never," she started. "We heard you call the building fund your retirement plan," he continued, his voice rising. A gasp went through the crowd. I had missed that part in the audio, but Zoe must have played the earlier recordings too, the ones where she planned to embezzle the church funds once she had secured my estate. "Lies," Vanessa screamed. She looked at the crowd. She looked for her friends. She looked for the women she had brunch with, the women she gossiped with. "Linda, help me," she pleaded, reaching out to a woman in the front row. Linda stood up. She picked up her glass of red wine. She looked Vanessa in the eye. "Do not speak to me," she said. And then she threw the wine. It splashed across Vanessa's chest, soaking her gray sweater looking like a fresh gunshot wound. That broke the dam. The crowd erupted. "Boo! Get her out! Thief! Murderer!" The wall of sound hit Vanessa like a physical blow. She staggered back. She looked around, realizing that her social armor was gone. She was naked before them. And then she snapped. The mask of the pious woman fell away, completely revealing the cornered animal underneath. "You are all idiots!" she screamed, her face twisting into a rictus of hate. "You are all sheep. You think you are better than me. You are nothing. I used you. I used all of you." She grabbed a vase of flowers from the nearest table and hurled it at the screen. It shattered against the projection, but the image of her crime remained unaffected. She grabbed a chair and threw it. She overturned a table, sending plates and glasses crashing to the floor. "I hate this place," she shrieked, tearing at her own clothes. "I hate your charity. I hate your self-righteousness. I deserve that money. I earned it. I put up with that old man for 3 years. I deserve every penny." She was destroying the hall. She was tearing down the banners she had helped paint. She was smashing the legacy she had tried to steal. It was grotesque. It was mesmerizing. I watched from my study, sipping a fresh cup of tea that I had made myself. Up on the screen, the side doors opened. 4 police officers walked in. They did not rush. They did not need to. Vanessa was not going anywhere. They walked up to her while she was trying to rip the tablecloth off the head table. 2 officers grabbed her arms. "Get off me!" she screamed, kicking and biting. "Do you know who I am? I am Vanessa Blackwood. I own this town." "You have the right to remain silent," an officer said, forcing her arms behind her back. "I waive my rights," she yelled. "I want my lawyer. Call Lionel. Call him." "Lionel isn't answering, Vanessa," I said to the empty room. "Lionel is probably shredding his files right now." They handcuffed her in front of the altar. They dragged her down the center aisle, the same aisle she had walked down with such pride 3 years ago. The crowd parted for the police, but they did not stay silent. They shamed her. They recorded her. 1,000 phones captured her downfall from every angle. As they pushed her through the doors, she looked up. She looked right into the camera lens that was broadcasting the feed. She looked right at me. "Cyrus," she screamed, her voice raw. "This isn't over. I will kill you. I will kill you." The feed cut to black. Zoe had pulled the plug. The show was over. I sat there in the silence of my home. The adrenaline was fading, leaving a cold exhaustion in its bones. My phone buzzed. It was Zoe. "Mom is in custody. Assault, disorderly conduct, public intoxication. And that is just the appetizer before the feds get involved. I am coming over." I put the phone down. I looked at the fern where I had poured the tea. The leaves were already starting to curl. The poison was potent. She would have killed me. She would have watched me die and then gone to a party to celebrate. I felt a sadness then, not for her, but for the time I had wasted. 3 years. 3 years of trying to buy love. 3 years of ignoring the signs. But the sadness was fleeting. It was replaced by the clarity of survival. I stood up. I walked to the window. The police lights were flashing in the distance down in the valley where the church stood. Vanessa was gone. Jasmine was gone. Tyler was running. But Tyler wouldn't get far. He was the weak link. He was the loose thread. And tomorrow I was going to pull that thread until the whole sweater unraveled. Because while Vanessa was loud, Tyler was dangerous. He was the one who had exposed my company to federal scrutiny. He was the one whose signature was on the money laundering documents. The police had Vanessa for attempted murder and assault, but the FBI wanted Tyler, and I knew exactly where he was going. He was going to the one place he thought he had left. He was going to try to liquidate the only asset he had access to. He was going to the warehouse. He didn't know that I had changed the codes. He didn't know that the warehouse was not empty. He was walking into a federal sting operation. I walked to the kitchen to pour another drink. The night was young, and the hunt was still on. The red and blue lights flashing against the peeling paint of Vanessa's mother's house were violent and blinding. It was 2 in the morning. The neighborhood known as the Heights was usually quiet at this hour, but tonight it was a theater of war. I was not there physically, but Zoe had a live feed from the tactical team's body cameras on her laptop. We sat in my study drinking bourbon and watching the end of Tyler Vance's short career as a criminal mastermind. Tyler had fled my house hours ago. He had run straight to the only place he had left. He thought he could hide in the back bedroom of that damp, crumbling house. He thought if he just stayed quiet, the world would forget about him. He was wrong. The FBI does not forget. The front door of the house did not open. It exploded inward under the force of a battering ram. Federal agents' one voice boomed over the speakers. "Get on the ground." I watched the feed. The camera rushed through the hallway, past the ugly floral wallpaper, past the photos of Vanessa that lined the walls. They found Jasmine screaming in the kitchen. They ignored her. They were not there for the shoplifter. They were hunting bigger game. They found Tyler in the guest bedroom. He was trying to climb out the window, but he was tangled in the cheap curtains. He looked like a trapped animal. "Get your hands up." Tyler froze. He raised his hands. He was crying. He was wearing the same designer trousers he had worn to dinner, but his shirt was torn and he was missing a shoe. "Don't shoot," he sobbed. "I didn't do it. I didn't poison anyone." That was Vanessa. The agent spun him around and slammed him against the wall. "We are not homicide, son," the agent said, snapping the handcuffs on. "We are Treasury. You are under arrest for money laundering, wire fraud, and conspiracy to defraud a financial institution." Tyler blinked, tears streaming down his face. "Money laundering. But I am just a consultant." "You are a signatory," the agent corrected him. "You signed the papers. You moved the money. You own the debt." They dragged him out of the house. Jasmine ran after them barefoot in the dirt, screaming that they were making a mistake. She tried to grab the agent's arm. Another agent pushed her back gently but firmly. "Ma'am, unless you want to join him, I suggest you step back." Jasmine collapsed on the front lawn, wailing. She watched as they shoved her husband into the back of a black SUV. There were no cameras from the press this time, just the silent, efficient machinery of federal justice. Zoe closed the laptop. She took a sip of her drink. "They have him," she said. "It is over." I looked at my daughter. "It is not over yet," I said. "He still thinks he is a victim. He still thinks he was just a consultant. He does not know who really owns him." Zoe smiled. "You should tell him, Dad. It is the polite thing to do." I drove to the federal detention center the next morning. I did not go as a father or a victim. I went as a witness. But before I entered the interrogation room, I met with the lead agent, a man named Miller, who owed me a favor from a trucking union dispute 10 years ago. I sat behind the two-way mirror. Tyler was sitting at a metal table. He looked small. The arrogance that had defined him for 3 years was gone, replaced by a shivering terror. He was staring at a file folder on the table. Agent Miller walked in. He sat down. He did not yell. He simply opened the file. Mr. Vance, Miller began. "You are in a lot of trouble. You moved $4 million through a shell company called Vance Global. That money came from illegal gambling dens in Miami." "I didn't know," Tyler stammered. "I thought it was crypto. I thought I was investing." "Ignorance is not a defense," Miller said. "But here is the interesting part. Vance Global took out a business loan 6 months ago. $200,000 to expand operations. You signed for it. You put up your assets as collateral." "I don't have assets," Tyler whispered. "You put up your future earnings," Miller said. "And do you know who bought that debt note last week?" Tyler shook his head. Miller slid a piece of paper across the table. "A holding company called Phoenix Logistics bought the debt," Miller said. "They bought it for pennies on the dollar. They are now your primary creditor. They can freeze every dime you ever make until the debt is paid plus interest." Tyler looked at the paper. He read the name of the director of Phoenix Logistics, Cyrus Blackwood. Tyler looked up at the mirror. He couldn't see me, but he knew I was there. He knew I was watching. "He bought me," Tyler whispered. "He did not just buy you," Miller said. "He fed you. He knew you were washing money 6 months ago. He could have stopped you. He could have kicked you out. Instead, he bought the debt. He let you dig the hole deeper. He waited until you were in so deep you couldn't see the sky, and then he pulled the ladder up." I watched Tyler's face crumble. He realized then that I was not a senile old man who got lucky. I was a predator who had been playing with his food. Why, Tyler asked the empty room. Why did he let me do it? "Because you insulted him," Miller said simply. "And because he needed leverage. And now he has it." Miller leaned forward. "Here is the deal, Tyler. You are looking at 20 years. Unless you give us something. Unless you give us the person who actually told you to sign those papers. The person who forged the other documents." Tyler hesitated. He looked at the mirror again. He looked at his reflection. He saw a man with no future, a man owned by his stepfather, a man facing prison. Vanessa, he blurted out. It was Vanessa. I leaned closer to the glass. Tell me more, Miller said. She made me do it. Tyler said the words, tumbling out in a rush of panic. She found the contacts. She knew the guys in Miami. She told me it was safe. She said Cyrus was too old to notice the mail. She made me practice his signature. Miller opened a notebook. She made you forge Cyrus's signature. Yes, Tyler cried. On the loan applications, on the bank transfers. She said she was entitled to the money. She said he was going to die soon anyway, so we were just taking an advance. She is the mastermind. I just did what she told me. She threatened to kick me out if I didn't help. She said she would ruin me. I closed my eyes. There it was, the final betrayal. Vanessa had not just stolen from me. She had corrupted this idiot boy and turned him into a felon to feed her own greed. Miller stood up. That is all we needed to hear, Mr. Vance. We will type up your statement. You are going to testify against your mother-in-law. In exchange, we will recommend 5 years instead of 20. 5 years. Tyler sobbed. Better than 20, Miller said. I walked out of the observation room. I felt heavy. It was not a victory. It was a tragedy. In the hallway, Jasmine was waiting. She had managed to get into the visitor area. She looked like a ghost. Her eyes were red. Her hair was matted. She saw me and ran toward me. Cyrus, she cried, reaching out to grab my coat. Cyrus, please. You have to help him. You have to help us. I stepped back, avoiding her touch. I don't have to do anything, Jasmine. Please, she begged, falling to her knees on the linoleum floor. Tyler is an idiot, but he is not a criminal. Mom made him do it. You heard him. He is just weak. You can fix this. You know people. Make a call, drop the charges, pay the debt. I will do anything. I will work. I will pay you back. I looked down at her. I saw the girl who had mocked my clothes, the girl who had called me a chauffeur, the girl who had laughed when her mother called me a wallet. You want me to save him, I asked. Yes, she sobbed. Please, we are family. I shook my head. Yesterday you told me I was a disgrace to my race, Jasmine. You told me I was ruining your future. You told me you hated me. I was angry, she wailed. I didn't mean it. You meant every word I said. And you were right about one thing. I am a wallet to you. That is all I ever was. I leaned down so our faces were level. And wallets do not have feelings, Jasmine. Wallets do not have mercy. Wallets do not save people. Wallets just hold money. And right now, this wallet is closed. I stood up. He is going to prison, Jasmine. And your mother is going to prison. And you are going to be alone. You should get used to it. It is the only thing you have earned. I walked away. I heard her screaming my name echoing down the long, sterile hallway. I did not look back. I walked out into the sunlight. I took my phone out. I called O'Malley. Tyler confessed, I said. He gave up Vanessa. Good, O'Malley said. That seals the fraud case. What about the civil suit? Proceed, I said. Take the rest. Take the furniture. Take the jewelry. Take the clothes off their backs if you have to. Understood, Cyrus. I hung up. I got into my car. I looked at my hands on the steering wheel. They were steady. Vanessa was next. She had lost her money. She had lost her reputation. Now she was going to lose her freedom. But she still had one thing left. She still had her pride. I was going to take that too. Because a woman who poisons her husband's tea does not deserve to have pride. She deserves to have nothing. I started the engine. The final act was approaching, and I was going to make sure she watched every second of it. The financial freeze hit Vanessa like a rogue wave. She was sitting in a nail salon 3 days after the church debacle, trying to maintain the facade that her life wasn't over. She handed the technician a debit card to pay for her manicure. It was her secret card linked to an account she had hidden from me for years, funded by skimming from the grocery budget and padding the renovation costs of her mother's house. She thought it was safe. She thought it was untouchable. It was declined. She tried again. Declined. She called the bank right there in the salon, surrounded by women who used to be her friends but now pretended not to see her. I am sorry, Mrs. Blackwood, the customer service agent said. Your assets have been frozen by federal order. Your name has been linked to an ongoing money laundering investigation involving a Mr. Tyler Vance. All accounts associated with your Social Security number are currently under seizure. Vanessa dropped the phone. She looked at her half-finished nails. She looked at the technician waiting for payment. She realized with a dawning horror that she didn't even have $20 in cash. She had to leave her driver's license as collateral just to walk out of the salon. She walked out into the street, a woman undone. She had lost her husband. She had lost her reputation. She had lost her home. And now she had lost her last lifeline. She was not just broke, she was radioactive. She went back to her mother's house. It was empty. Her mother was staying with a sister in Florida too, ashamed to be seen in town. Jasmine was gone, having fled to stay with a friend who didn't know the full story yet. Tyler was in federal custody, singing like a bird. Vanessa sat alone in the dark kitchen. The hunger was real now. The despair was absolute. She looked around at the peeling paint, the water stains, the evidence of a life she had fought so hard to escape. She realized she was back where she started. A poor girl from the wrong side of the tracks with nothing but her looks and her rage. And her rage was a living thing. It coiled in her belly, hot and venomous. It whispered to her that this was not fair, that she deserved better, that I was the villain who had stolen her future. She stood up. She walked to the knife block on the counter. She pulled out a carving knife. It was old and dull, but the point was sharp enough. She looked at her reflection in the blade. She saw a woman with nothing left to lose. "If I am going down," she whispered to the empty room, "I am taking him with me." She put the knife in her purse. She walked out the door. She did not take her car because she didn't have gas. She walked. It was a 5-mile walk to my estate. She walked it in heels, blistering her feet, fueling her anger with every step. I was sitting in the dining room eating a quiet dinner with Zoe. We were celebrating. The judge had granted the restraining order against Vanessa that morning. The divorce papers had been served. The end was in sight. Zoe was telling me about her son, my grandson, who was starting kindergarten next week. It was a normal conversation, a happy conversation, the kind of conversation I had missed for 3 years. Then the front door crashed open. I had forgotten to lock it. A rookie mistake born of a false sense of security. Vanessa stood in the hallway. She looked wild. Her hair was matted, her feet were bleeding. Her eyes were black holes of madness. She marched into the dining room. She did not look at Zoe. She looked only at me. "You took everything," she screamed. "You took my life." She reached into her purse. She pulled out the knife. I stood up, knocking my chair over. Zoe did not move. She sat perfectly still, her hand resting on the table near her napkin. Vanessa raised the knife. It caught the light of the chandelier. "I am going to kill you, Cyrus," she said, her voice trembling. "And then I am going to kill myself, and we will be together in hell." She took a step forward. "Vanessa, stop," I said, holding up my hands. "Put the knife down. It is over. It is not over until you are dead," she shrieked. She lunged. But she never made it past the end of the table. Zoe moved. It was a blur of motion too fast to track. One moment her hand was on the napkin. The next, she was standing holding a Sig Sauer P320 service pistol. She leveled it at Vanessa's chest. "Take one more step, Vanessa," Zoe said, her voice calm and cold as ice. "And you will never take another step again." Vanessa froze. She looked at the gun. She looked at Zoe. "You won't shoot me," she sneered. "You are a prosecutor, not a killer." Zoe cocked the hammer. The click was loud in the silent room. "I am a mother protecting her father," Zoe said. "And you are an intruder with a deadly weapon. In this state, that is a justifiable homicide. Do not test me, Vanessa. I have put men on death row for less than what you are doing right now." Vanessa looked into Zoe's eyes. She saw the truth there. Zoe would not hesitate. She would put 2 rounds in Vanessa's chest and then go back to finishing her salad. The knife wavered in Vanessa's hand. The adrenaline began to fade, replaced by a crushing exhaustion. She realized she was outgunned, outsmarted, and out of time. "Drop it," Zoe ordered. The knife clattered to the floor. Vanessa collapsed. She fell to her knees, sobbing. It was a pathetic sound, a sound of total defeat. Why she cried. "Why did you have to be so cruel, Cyrus? I just wanted a good life. I just wanted to be someone." I walked around the table. I kicked the knife away. I stood over her. "You wanted a life you didn't earn, Vanessa," I said. "You wanted my life. I loved you," she sobbed. "In the beginning, I really loved you." I pulled my phone out of my pocket. I started recording. "Tell the truth, Vanessa," I said. "For once in your life, tell the truth. Did you ever love me? Or did you just love the security?" She looked up at me. Her face was streaked with tears and snot. She looked at the gun still pointed at her. She looked at the luxury around her that she would never touch again. "I hated you," she whispered. "I hated your old clothes. I hated your boring stories. I hated your smell. I hated everything about you. But I loved the money. I loved the power. I loved being Mrs. Blackwood. I thought I could fake it until you died. I thought I earned it by putting up with you." I nodded slowly. "Thank you, Vanessa," I said. I stopped the recording. "That will be Exhibit A in the divorce proceedings," I said. "Irreconcilable differences. Fraud, attempted murder, and admission of bad faith. You just saved me millions in alimony." Zoe lowered the gun, but she did not holster it. "Get up, Vanessa," Zoe said. "The police are on their way, and this time they are not coming for a welfare check. They are coming for attempted homicide." Vanessa stood up slowly. She looked at me one last time. There was no hate left in her eyes, only emptiness. "You win, Cyrus," she said softly. "You win." "I did not win, Vanessa," I said. "I survived. There is a difference." We waited in silence for the sirens. Vanessa sat on the floor, staring at the wall. Zoe stood guard gun at her side. I sat back down at the table. I looked at my cold dinner. I looked at my daughter. I looked at the woman I had married. It was a tragedy. A Shakespearean tragedy played out in a suburban dining room. But as the blue lights flashed against the window, I felt a strange sense of closure. The cancer had been cut out. The wound would heal, and I would still be standing. Because I am Cyrus Blackwood, and I do not break. 2 days after the police took Vanessa away in handcuffs, my house was full again. But this was not a dinner party. There were no caterers, there was no music, there was only silence and the heavy weight of judgment. I had called the family, not Vanessa's family, my family, the people who mattered. Auntie Rose, who is 90 years old and remembers when I delivered coal in the winter to pay for my first truck. Uncle Bernard, who runs the barbershop on 42nd Street and knows every secret in the city. My cousins who work in the shipping yards. The people who built the Blackwood name with sweat and integrity. They sat on the sofas and the chairs lining the walls of the living room. They wore their Sunday best out of respect for the house, but their faces were grim. They were the jury. In the center of the room sat Vanessa Tyler and Jasmine. Vanessa had been released on bail thanks to a very expensive bond that ate up the last of her hidden cash reserves. Tyler was out on a federal bond monitored by an ankle bracelet courtesy of a deal Zoe had cut with the U.S. Attorney's Office. Jasmine was there because she had nowhere else to go. They sat on 3 folding chairs I had placed in the middle of the expensive Persian rug. They looked small. They looked terrified. They looked like defendants. I stood by the fireplace. Zoe stood next to me. She was not wearing her suit today. She was wearing casual clothes, but she still looked like an executioner. On the coffee table in front of them sat 3 thick manila envelopes. "Welcome to family court," I said, my voice echoing in the silent room. Vanessa did not look up. She was staring at her hands. Her nails were chipped. Her hair was pulled back. She looked 20 years older than she had a week ago. "You all know why we are here," I continued. "You broke the covenant, you broke the law, and you broke my trust. The legal system will deal with you in time, but the legal system is slow. And I am not a patient man." I pointed to the envelopes. "Inside these envelopes are your futures, or what is left of them. You have a choice today. You can accept the terms I am offering, or you can take your chances with the full wrath of the federal government and my lawyers." I picked up the first envelope. I wrote the name on it in thick black marker. Tyler. Tyler looked up. He was sweating. He looked like a man who hadn't slept in 40 hours. I handed the envelope to him. "Open it," I said. He opened it with shaking hands. He pulled out a document. It was stapled to a plane ticket. "What is this?" he whispered. "It is a divorce decree," Zoe said, stepping forward. "Uncontested, irreconcilable differences. You sign it now." Tyler looked at Jasmine. Jasmine looked back at him, her eyes wide with fear. "What else is in there?" I asked. "A bus ticket," Tyler said. "To Oklahoma." One way I clarified. "That is where you are from, Tyler. That is where you are going back to." "Here's the deal," Zoe said. "You sign the divorce papers. You get on that bus tonight. You disappear from this city. You never contact anyone in this family again. In exchange, I will recommend to the judge that your federal sentence be served in a minimum security facility near Tulsa. You will still go to prison, Tyler. but you will survive it. And if I don't, Tyler asked, his voice trembling. If you don't, Zoe said, leaning in close, if you try to stay, if you try to fight, I will revoke your deal. I will charge you with the full weight of the RICO statutes. You will go to a maximum security penitentiary for 20 years, and you will go in as a known snitch. Tyler swallowed hard. He looked at Jasmine. He looked at the life he thought he was going to have. The penthouses, the Teslas, the parties. Then he looked at the pen Zoe was holding out. He took the pen. Tyler, don't, Jasmine cried, reaching for him. We are married. You promised. Tyler pulled away from her. He looked at her with pure disgust. You ruined my life, Jasmine, he said. You and your mother. I should have never met you. He put the paper on the coffee table. He signed it. He signed it fast and hard. He stood up, clutching the bus ticket. Can I go now, he asked me. Get out of my sight, I said. He walked out. He didn't look back. He didn't say goodbye to his wife. He walked out the front door and out of our lives forever. Jasmine sat there stunned. Her husband had just traded her for a lighter prison sentence and a bus ride. She looked at me, tears streaming down her face. He left me, she whispered. He made a business decision, I said, just like you taught him. I picked up the second envelope. Vanessa. Vanessa looked up. Her eyes were dull. She knew there was no mercy coming. I tossed the envelope into her lap. Inside that envelope is a confession of judgment, I said. It states that you owe me $200,000, the money you stole, the money you sent to your mother, the money you spent on your vanity. She opened the envelope. She looked at the document. I don't have $200,000, she said, her voice flat. I know, I said. That is why there is a second document. She pulled it out. It was a plea agreement. You are going to sign the debt note, I explained. That debt will follow you for the rest of your life. Every paycheck you earn, I will take 30%. Every tax refund, I will take it. You will never own a home again. You will never have a credit card again. You will work for me until the day you die. And in exchange, she asked. In exchange, I will not press charges for the attempted murder, I said. The room gasped. Auntie Rose covered her mouth. Uncle Bernard shook his head. They had heard the rumors, but hearing me say it out loud made it real. Vanessa flinched. The poison, Zoe said. The knife. We have the video, Vanessa. We have your fingerprints on the weapon. That is 25 years to life. Attempted homicide. Aggravated assault. Vanessa looked at the papers. If you sign the debt note and agree to leave the state of New York immediately, Zoe continued, I will drop the state charges. You will still face fraud charges for the credit cards, but that is white-collar crime. You will do 2 years, maybe 3. But you won't die in prison. Vanessa looked at me. You are banishing me, she said. I am evicting you, I corrected. From my life. From my city. From my memory. She picked up the pen. Her hand was shaking so bad she could barely hold it. I loved you once, she whispered. I looked at her. I looked at the woman who had tried to kill me because I wouldn't pay a restaurant bill. No, Vanessa, I said. You loved the reflection of yourself you saw in my money. She signed. She signed her life away. She signed herself into a lifetime of debt and poverty. Zoe took the papers. You have 1 hour to vacate your mother's house, she said. The marshals are on their way to seize it to pay part of the debt. I suggest you start walking. Vanessa stood up. She looked at Jasmine. She hesitated. Take me with you, Jasmine begged, grabbing her mother's hand. Mom, please, don't leave me here with him. Vanessa pulled her hand away. I can't, she said. I can't take care of you anymore, Jasmine. I can barely take care of myself. She walked out. She walked out just like Tyler, broken, defeated, alone. Jasmine was the last one left on the folding chairs. She sat alone in the center of the room, surrounded by my family. She looked like a child who had gotten lost in a department store. She looked at the third envelope. It was thick. Is that a bus ticket too? She asked, her voice barely a whisper. I picked up the envelope. I sat down on the coffee table right in front of her. No, Jasmine, I said. You are not going anywhere. She looked hopeful for a second. A flicker of her old entitlement sparked in her eyes. You are going to help me, she asked. You are going to let me stay. I opened the envelope. I pulled out the contents. It was not a check. It was not a lease. It was a uniform, a gray jumpsuit, heavy cotton with a name patch sewn onto the chest, Jasmine, and underneath the name the logo of Blackwood Logistics. She stared at it. She recoiled from it as if it were infected. "What is this?" she asked. I also pulled out a contract, an employment contract. "You said I looked like a driver, Jasmine," I said, my voice calm. "You said I looked like the help. You think you are too good to work. You think you are too good to sweat." I tossed the uniform into her lap. "You have no degree. You have no husband. You have no car. You have no home. And as of today, you have no mother to bail you out." I pointed to the contract. "This is a job offer, Jasmine. Entry level. Environmental maintenance technician." "Janitor?" Jasmine gasped. "You want me to be a janitor? I want you to be useful," I said. $15 an hour, 40 hours a week, night shift. You will clean the depot. You will scrub the floors where the drivers walk. You will clean the bathrooms used by the men and women who actually work for a living." "I cannot do that," she cried. "I have a master's degree in art history." "You have a master's degree in spending my money," I corrected. "And now you are going to pay it back." I leaned in close. "Here is the choice, Jasmine. You sign this contract and you put on that uniform. If you work hard, if you show up on time, if you keep your mouth shut and do the job, I will provide you with a small efficiency apartment near the depot. I will give you a chance to eat. And if I say no," she asked, defiance trying to push through her fear. "Then you walk out that door," I said, pointing to the exit, "with nothing, no money, no reference, no family. You go out there and you see how far your art history degree gets you on the street." She looked at the uniform. She looked at the contract. She looked at the door. She looked at Auntie Rose, who was watching her with a gaze that could peel paint. She realized then that the party was over. The music had stopped, the lights were on, and she was the one who had to clean up the mess. She picked up the pen. She cried as she did it. Big, ugly tears of humiliation. She signed the contract. She clutched the gray uniform to her chest. "When do I start?" she whispered. "Tonight," I said. "The trucks come in at 4 a.m. The floors need to be shining by 6. I stood up. "Zoe will drive you to the depot. Welcome to the working class, Jasmine. Try not to embarrass us." Jasmine stood up. She walked toward the door with Zoe. She walked slowly, her head down, her spirit broken. The room was silent. My family watched her go. Uncle Bernard stood up. He walked over to me. He put a heavy hand on my shoulder. "You did good, Cyrus," he said. "You did what had to be done." I nodded. I felt tired. I felt old. But I felt clean. The house was empty of the parasites. The cancer had been cut out. It hurt. The surgery always hurts. But the patient was going to survive. I looked at the empty chairs. I looked at the envelopes on the table. Justice is not always a gavel and a judge. Sometimes justice is a bus ticket, a debt note, and a mop. And sometimes the hardest thing a man has to do is teach the people he loves that actions have consequences, even if it breaks his heart to do it. Jasmine stood there clutching the gray jumpsuit. I watched her hands tremble. I waited for the moment of humility. I waited for the spark of realization that would tell me there was a human being worth saving underneath all that vanity. It never came. She looked at the rough cotton fabric like it was covered in disease. She looked at the contract on the table. Then she looked at me. Her eyes were not filled with regret. They were filled with the same toxic arrogance that had poisoned her mother. She threw the uniform on the floor. It landed with a soft slap that sounded louder than a gunshot in the quiet room. "I am not scrubbing floors," she spat. "I am not cleaning toilets for your drivers. You think you can break me, Cyrus. You think you can humiliate me into submission. You are wrong." She reached into her purse. She pulled out her phone. "I have options," she said, her voice shaking with a manic sort of triumph. "I have Arthur." I looked at Zoe. Zoe raised an eyebrow. "Arthur?" I asked. "Arthur Sterling," she said. "He is 82 years old. He made his money in steel. He has been trying to take me to dinner for 6 months. I thought he was disgusting. I thought he was too old. But compared to scrubbing floors for $15 an hour, he looks like Prince Charming." She dialed a number. She put it on speaker. "Hello, my darling," a wheezing voice answered. "Arthur, it is Jasmine. About that trip to the Riviera. Can you pick me up?" "Right now." I watched her sell herself. I watched her trade her dignity not for survival but for comfort. She chose to be a trophy for a man older than her stepfather rather than work an honest day in her life. She hung up the phone. She looked at me with a sneer. He is sending his driver, a Rolls-Royce Cyrus, not a tow truck. I stood up. I walked over to the coffee table. I picked up the employment contract. I ripped it in half. "Goodbye, Jasmine," I said. She grabbed her purse. She walked to the door. She stopped and looked back at her mother's empty chair. She looked at Tyler's signed divorce papers. She looked at me. "You will regret this," she said. "One day you will be old and sick and you will need family. And we won't be there." I smiled. It was a genuine smile. "That, Jasmine, is the best promise you have ever made me." She walked out. I heard the front door close. I heard the heavy click of the lock engaging. I took my phone out of my pocket. I opened my contacts list. I scrolled down to Jasmine Vance. I pressed delete. I scrolled to Vanessa Blackwood. I pressed delete. I scrolled to Tyler Vance. I pressed delete. I looked at the screen. The names were gone. The numbers were gone. It was as if they had never existed. Uncle Bernard walked over and kicked the gray jumpsuit aside. "Trash takes itself out sometimes," he grunted. I nodded. Zoe stood up and poured 2 fingers of bourbon into a glass. She handed it to me. "To a clean house," she said. I raised the glass. "To a clean house." Time moves differently when you cut out the rot. The silence in my house was no longer empty. It was peaceful. The air was lighter. I received updates on Vanessa. Not because I asked for them, but because in a city like this, people like to talk. And they knew I was the one who had cast her out. She did not leave the state immediately. She tried to cling to the edges of her old life. She moved into a cheap motel near the airport. She got a job at a cosmetic counter in a dying mall. She spent her days trying to sell face cream to women who remembered when she used to host galas. I saw a photo of her once taken by a mutual acquaintance. She looked hagged. The Botox had worn off. The filler had dissolved. She looked like a woman of 50 who was trying to be 30 and failing. She looked tired. She tried to call me once 3 months after the divorce was finalized. It was late at night. I did not answer. She left a voicemail. She was drunk. She was crying. She said she missed the way I made coffee. I deleted the voicemail before she finished the sentence. Tyler was a different story. He took the bus to Oklahoma. He took the deal. But a man like Tyler does not learn. A man like Tyler thinks the world is a cheat code he just hasn't cracked yet. He stayed in Tulsa for 2 months. He worked at a gas station. It was honest work. It could have been his redemption. But Tyler did not want redemption. He wanted a shortcut. He got involved in a crypto scam. He tried to convince a local church group to invest their building fund in a revolutionary new coin. He forged documents. He used the skills Vanessa had taught him. He was not as smart as he thought. The local sheriff was the deacon of that church. Tyler was arrested. Because he violated the terms of his federal plea agreement by committing a new felony, the deal Zoe had cut for him was voided. The federal judge in New York was not amused. He was sentenced to 15 years, maximum security, no parole for 12. I sent a copy of the sentencing report to the warehouse break room. I pinned it to the bulletin board. A reminder to the drivers. There are no shortcuts. There is only the road. 6 months later, I sat on my back porch. The sun was setting, painting the sky in streaks of violet and gold. The air smelled of cut grass and expensive bourbon. Zoe sat in the rocking chair next to me. She had taken a leave of absence from the DOJ. She was helping me restructure the company. She was finding errors my previous accountants had missed. She was ruthless. She was brilliant. On the lawn, my grandson Malik was playing with a toy truck. He is 6 years old. He has Zoe's eyes and my stubborn chin. I watched him push the truck through the dirt, making engine noises. "He is going to be good," Zoe said, watching him. "He likes the machines." I nodded. "Come here, Malik," I called out. He ran over, dropping the truck. He climbed onto my lap. "Grandpa, look," he said, holding up the toy. "It has a flat tire." "We can fix it," I said. "We always fix it." I looked at Zoe. She looked happy. She looked at peace. The lines around her eyes had softened. "Dad," she said quietly, "do you ever feel bad? About Vanessa? About Jasmine?" I took a sip of my drink. I let the burn settle in my chest. I thought about the question. I thought about the woman I had married. I thought about the tea laced with sedatives. I thought about the knife. "No," I said. Zoe looked at me. "Really?" Not even a little bit. I put my glass down. I stroked Malik's hair. Zoe listened to me. There is a lie that society tells us. They tell us that forgiveness is a virtue. They tell us that family is unconditional. They tell us that turning the other cheek is strength. I looked out at the estate I had built. They are wrong. Turning the other cheek just gives them a new place to hit. Forgiveness without repentance is just permission to sin again. I looked at my daughter. I practiced cruelty, Zoe. I admit that. I took their cars, I took their homes, I took their futures. I destroyed them publicly and completely. But it was a necessary cruelty. It was a surgical cruelty, like cutting off a gangrenous limb to save the body. If I had been kind, if I had given them money, if I had let them stay, they would have killed me. Maybe not with poison, maybe just with stress, with heartbreak, with the slow drip of their ingratitude. I squeezed Malik's shoulder. Timely cruelty. Zoe is the highest form of self-respect. It is the ability to look at someone you love and say, I love me more. I value my peace more than your comfort. I value my life more than your greed. Zoe nodded slowly. She understood. She had pulled the gun. She knew the weight of that choice. You saved us, Dad, she said. You cleaned the house. I did, I said. I looked at the sun dipping below the horizon. The world was quiet. The phone wasn't ringing with demands. The bank accounts were secure. The legacy was safe. I picked up my glass. To the survivors, I said. Zoe clinked her glass against mine. To the survivors. I watched Malik run back to his truck. He was singing a little song. He was happy. He was safe. He would grow up knowing the value of $1. He would grow up knowing that respect is earned, not demanded. I closed my eyes and listened to the wind in the trees. I was alone in my head, but I was not lonely. I had my daughter, I had my grandson, I had my dignity. And for the first time in 3 years, I had silence. It was the most expensive thing I had ever bought, and it was worth every penny. True generosity is not about the size of the check you write, but the character of the person holding the pen. I spent 3 years thinking my wealth could purchase loyalty, but I discovered it only rented their patience. The most painful lesson was realizing that family is not defined by a marriage certificate, but by mutual respect. Enabling parasites isn't love, it is self-destruction. If you allow people to treat you as nothing more than a resource, do not be surprised when they discard you once you are empty. Sometimes the only way to find peace is to burn the bridge that connects you to your pain. If you believe that dignity is worth more than any relationship, hit that like button and subscribe and let me know in the comments. Have you ever had to choose between your family and your self-respect?